Hey, oh, hmm. Test, test, test. Okay, yeah, there was a mic problem there. How's everyone doing? Sorry, running late. Took me a while to go home from work, and I wasn't in any situation where I could like post an update saying that I was running late. So I hope everyone's doing good. Apologies, and yeah. Um, hey, Ashlyn, how's it going? This is a video. I'm gonna play two videos tonight. It's about a theme. People have been part of the Discord, the Champion Trucks Discord. Probably sick of this video because I have uh, posted it a bunch. Also, like, comment, share, subscribe, and share. Definitely share because we're trying to get remonetized or like a couple hundred hours of viewing away. We were demonetized for taking so long without posting. I didn't even know that was a thing. So we did it to ourselves. No one to blame, but um, ourselves. So be it. But yeah, we are. We had a video on Monday, but it got blocked, and we're appealing it. So that's why you didn't see us. Yeah, so we have about 184 viewing hours left to 184 viewing hours left for us to be able to remonetize. So yeah, we're not too far away. Anyway, what they want to talk about is Millennial Writing, and it was a video I thought was very good. I'm kind of not, and I'm gonna play these videos, and I'm gonna end it with what I think is my theory as to the roots of millennial writing. I think I have kind of figured it out. But anyway, let me get started. First, let me hit share. Yeah, these copyright strikes are a bitch. I was just doing podcasts on Monday. So I was thinking podcasts would be okay, but one of the podcasts that I discussed, ironically enough, the shortest one, it was only 7 hours. Sorry, 7 hours, like 7 minutes. It was owned by iHeartMedia, and they struck it down like immediately. Okay, this is called Millennial Writing, and it's by an account called ShreddedNerd, and I thought it was very good. And again, people on Discord, I know, probably sick of me always linking to it, but I think it was such a great description of like what like 10 years of writing under the Great Awakening has been. And it feels like it's only a couple years later, but it feels like it's almost irrelevant to talk about this because so much of this style is dead. I feel like since Trump won, since the dismantling of DEI and a lot of woke television and movies and books and whatever, there's been like a pullback on this style of writing because it was very popular in genre stuff and uh, for some reason like vaguely woke kind of stuff. But anyway, you know what? I don't remember if I shared the sound. Let me make sure the sound is turned on. Okay, cool. So here we go.
In writing. It seems to be getting more common over time. It's a certain type of writing. I've noticed a trend in writing. It seems to be getting more common over time. It's a certain type of writing that I'm trying to describe. The best term I can think of to call it is millennial writing. You'll find out why. Okay.
One thing I'll say about millennial writing, this is a term that he uses for it, but I don't think you can really put it all on millennials. There is a lot of Gen X people who write like this, and I think millennials kind of learned it from Gen X. But you know what I think kind of happened is that there was more of a diversity in Gen X, but the Gen Xers, for some reason, who survived into the 2000s and 2010s, the ones who had the most impact or lasted the longest, I think were a certain type. There's a certain type of Gen Xer that kind of persevered and survived the longest in media, and they were, I think, the ones who were guilty of the traits that we associate with millennials the most. So millennials as a whole kind of get this broad brush, but to give an example, like someone like Joss Whedon, I think had a lot of the tics that people associate with millennial writing. It's just that Joss Whedon's writing wasn't as indicative of a whole generation the way I think they had more influence on a later generation, this certain type of Gen X writer, than they had on their peers. Yeah, I'm not sure why this happened, but it happened like in every race too. Like I think about all the all the Gen Xers who were, big in the '90s and 2000s. But when we think about the ones who had the most like impact going on the next generation, I feel like the Kanyes, the Andre 3000s, the John Legends. Like for some reason, I feel like there's a million types of Gen Xers, but a certain contingent of Black Gen X had a disproportionate influence on the Black millennials. Like I feel like Black millennials, they're not really as influenced by like Dr. Dre or 50 Cent or whatever. They like the Gen Xers who, like Aaron Magruder, that kind of Soulquarian, neo soul, backpacky, boondocks-ish, Chappelle Show type of common. Yep. The kind that's like this kind of like Black bohemian, um, kind of a nerd, but not really a nerd. But like the middle class, friendly, like Black guy who is cool hanging out with white people too. Like that's one example. But I just feel like in general, like Black millennials, white millennials, whatever millennials, tend to be influenced by whatever class of Gen X lasted the longest. Like, a certain contingent of, Gen X will end up being the ones that will inspire like a majority of the next generation in like every, race and area. And I think the same thing happened with like millennial writing. There's like a certain type of Gen X writer that very quippy, very meta, very very clever. Like people like Grant Morrison, Brian Michael Bendis, Mark Millar, people like that. I think play a lot of role in the root of millennial writing, but they're also better writers. Like these people have their worst aspects, but minus the redeeming parts. And I feel like the same thing happens with a lot of Black millennials, and they have a lot of like the Kanye's of the world's like worst aspects, but without like the redeeming aspects of like a college dropout era Kanye.
Imagine this. You know those tweets that are like, capitalism low-key killed our vibe and gaslit us into being okay with our bosses and landlords taking our excess value? And then it has like 250,000 likes. I'm more so just referring to the Twitter style of speaking, the tone and affectation and vocabulary. Now, have you noticed this style of writing in modern games? I'll go through some examples to shed further light. Remember the Cringe Saints Row reboot?
Wait, so was my mic off? Because I heard myself, but someone said my mic was off. Did it get disconnected? Let me know. Was I just talking on mute for you guys this whole time? That'd be really annoying. Let me know before I continue. There's a little bit of a delay, so it takes me. Oh, so it's kind of echoey. Okay. So you can hear it, but it's kind of echoey. Let me see. Okay, so you can hear, but some people say it's kind of echoey. Interesting. All right, cool. All right. Yeah, so anyway, here we go.
New Tales from the Borderlands, there is undeniably a certain style here. By the way, I'm using footage with credit from YouTube for these, all within fair use, because I'm sorry, but why on earth would I want to play these games? Why would you expect or even want anybody to play these games? Say what you will about Telltale movie games, Tales from the Borderlands was a very well-written game, with well-wrought and interesting characters. It'd be reasonable to be excited for the follow-up to that on the basis of your enjoyment of the previous one. What you may forget is that this game isn't made by Telltale, it's Gearbox, who made Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 is an excellent example of this style as well. In fact, the gradual collapsing quality of Borderlands writing maps onto this trend really well. Borderlands 3 had excessive...
Now, I don't know a lot about video games and which companies do what. I know people are very passionate about that. So I've heard these different companies, Telltale and whatnot. And I don't know if they have a particularly bad reputation for writing.
Pop culture references, like a mission where you need to get the big suck. I can just imagine the millennial writers sitting back in their room chuckling at that, a wry grin on their face for the new level of comedy they just unlocked. The main villains being streamers. It doesn't even say anything. It just has them as streamer cult leaders. Like, ooh, streamers are cult leaders. How so? At least have some sort of evidence of that or present a critique. None of the characters are really built up.
Yeah, one of the problems with, I feel like a lot of millennial social justice related stuff is they like to introduce themes, and they feel like just introducing a theme is the same as having a deep thought on it. So they'll introduce a theme, and the main insight is, hey, this theme exists. And sometimes they might add an extra, it's kind of bad, or it's kind of good that this theme exists, but they won't really litigate why, really challenge you. It's kind of meant to be understood. And so they'll either bring up a theme and not really say anything deep about it, or they will kind of engage the theme, but it's written for somebody who clearly already is in the tank for their opinion. And it's not really presented to be a very thought-provoking, persuasive, nuanced exploration of said theme. It's more just letting you know, hey, this theme is being discussed, so we're cool. You've seen this on Twitter. You've heard people argue about it, and we want you to know that this is a hip product, and we talk about all the cool things you've seen talked about on social media.
It's like the writers are entitled. They just expect that we care about these characters. The moments in the game don't carry any weight or impact. Maya's death was so obviously avoidable and contrived. An obnoxious character like Tiny Tina was acceptable in 2012, when we didn't know any better, but they just kept riffing on the same annoying aspects of these characters without moving on. They just can't let go of these lol so random characters. Why do I care if Atlas wins this corporate war? Apparently Maliwan is an evil corporation. Corporate assholes. But so are the guys we're fighting for. And the game just presents it as good enough.
One thing I think is very different, and this is where I'm going to say my theory here, because I think it's going to become relevant to some stuff that's going to be said later, right? I've been thinking about it and looking at stuff, and you guys can tell me if you think I'm way off or not, but I think there's three main camps of the roots of millennial writing style / humor. And I think when I say it, it'll make a lot of sense. A big difference with Gen X and older generations is we had our kind of dopey, targeted at our age stuff, but there wasn't that much TV. We had, at one point, there were 3 channels, and cable was a luxury. Cable wasn't just a given. You know, it took us a while to get cable, and then cable wasn't like what cable became for millennials and later, where it's just so many channels and so much new content, but you had to kind of watch, like, even if you watch, cable became something where even if you were watching, say, reruns, if you were a kid, you can fill your day with kid stuff all day long. You could watch Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, all this stuff. You can fill your day with kiddie stuff, but you couldn't really do that when I was younger, right? So we had this thing. It was a very interesting time. I feel like people my age will be able to relate to this, right? We were always reading and watching things we had no business reading or watching at our age, but it wasn't even like naughty or crazy stuff. It wasn't like, oh, we're watching something pornographic or we're watching something that's full of gore. It wasn't like we were watching older, like cool, edgy stuff. I mean, like stuff like, it wasn't uncommon, I'm like an urban black kid in the 80s, and we all watched Golden Girls. Like, you didn't have that much curated TV for yourself. So you would just watch things. You would just watch, like, there were a lot of times we'd be watching TV and we'd be staying up late, and then The Helicopter came on, and that was MASH, and MASH was boring and for adults. But somehow I must have watched dozens of episodes of MASH as a kid, just because it was on. And it was one of the rare nights I got to stay up. So we just leave it on. And we didn't understand what was going on. We watched all types of, watched Dynasty, like watched all types of things. Because you didn't have that many channels. So there was like more of a monoculture. A lot of people watched the same things. There was like a Dynasty rap song. That's how popular like Dynasty was with like young black people. Let me see if I can find it, because sometimes I swear I imagined this song. This is one song that I'm sure is not going to be hit by copyright. Nope, I can't find it. Hold on. Surprisingly, this is not on YouTube. YouTube usually has everything obscure. But yeah, I mean, like, oh wait, oh no, I think I found it. It was on Jive Records, like serious record label. This is the record label that had Tribe Called Quest and groups like that. So Jive Records released this. And the group is called Dynasty and Mimi.
A man, his family, and his sports. Hey, what time is it?
You know what time it is.
Oh, it's time for Dynasty, my favorite program. So let's start with Blake.
He built an empire from Colorado Blue and plays by his own ruthless rules. His secret sauce dark is the oil that born him wealth and holds no one higher than himself.
There's Crystal, who brings Blake great bliss, and Alexis, who's on Blake's hate.
I assume you guys know Dynasty, right? You know, with Blake and Alexis and Crystal had Linda Evans and Joan Collins and John Forsythe. But anyway.
Bliss, she's now referred as Blake's ex-wife, because of the lie, economic is screwing up his life.
I tried to make trouble for Blake's new wife Crystal by agitating her nerve and creating a system. Many say I'm ruthless, and some say I'm crazy for making Crystal lose her and Blake's first baby.
The weeks moved on, and
Now, I think that they're rapping about our actual storylines from the show.
the had passed, but finally they had their daughter at last. Blake has 3 other children, oh, it's 4. We have to wait till next week to find out more.
Yeah, but like Black Kids from the Hood used to sing the Dynasty song in the 80s. Like you would just watch weird things. It was like that would never happen today. Is it like, can you imagine like a serious rap label doing a novelty song about like a primetime white soap opera? It was just, you were just forced to watch things out of your natural comfort zone. Like you would just watch, so like we were kids. We used to watch Dynasty. It was a primetime show full of sex. And parents of Gen Xers were like weird. They didn't care like what we did. They didn't care if we had latchkeys and came home with nobody home. They didn't care. They used to have the commercial as 10 o'clock to know where your kids were. Like that's to remind the children, the parents of Gen X kids, like bring your kids in. Like it was so, you would stay home for hours on end with the microwave and some Chef Boyardee, and you just watch what you wanted. And the other thing is too, like right now, people have this very, like now in a family, the son will have a TV in the room, the sister will have a TV in a room, the mom and dad might have separate TVs, then everybody has phones. So even if you don't have a physical TV, you have a phone, you can watch things on your computer. But back then, at best, what would usually happen, there was the family/adult TV. And if you were lucky, there was a kids' TV. So you had to negotiate TV with your siblings, right? Or you had to negotiate TV like with your parents. And my sister and I had the black and white TV. And then there was like the general like family/adult TV. And watching TV is like a family. Like used to be a thing. It wasn't just everybody watches their own curated thing. So you kind of had to learn to negotiate things. And there's two things that I noticed are very interesting that are when I was growing up, the parents usually won. The parents vetoed everything. And I feel like Gen X people and younger baby boomers, when they became parents, they didn't want to be the tyrants that their parents were. They wanted to be more democratic. And like, I don't know when it happened, but you guys probably noticed it too. But I find it's way more likely now when there's a mixed age group, people will watch what the kids watch. The kids get to veto what's on TV. I didn't know Pusha T. I didn't know Pusha T did a Succession song. That's funny. That is very similar. Yeah, for some reason this song was very regional. Like it was played on New York radio, the Dynasty song, but that's when rap was like pretty regional and very, like, I don't know if at the time rap was being played around the country yet, but at the time, this is like during the time of Mr. Magic, Marty Mall, Chuck Chill Out. It was around that time, and they would play Dynasty like on those shows and stuff. This is like pre-Hot 97. So yeah, there was like a lot of regional rap that didn't make it other places. So in New York, the Dynasty song on Jive was like a real rap song. It wasn't like a novelty rap song made by like white people or something. It was like an actual, like on a rap label and everything. That's how. Yeah. But have you guys noticed this? Like, I'm sure some of y'all probably do with your kids. I've seen it, but a lot of times, like my cousins and stuff who have kids or are teenagers and whatever, like the TV will be on what they want to watch, and then adults will sit there, and we all just sit there and talk about what's on the screen for the kids, and that wasn't what it was like. So sometimes your parents want to watch something that was kind of too racy for you, but it's like you were there and they're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna leave you. As long as they didn't have like actual nudity and stuff, or sometimes it even would have nudity. Like, I don't know, like, our parents just didn't really want to delay gratification. like they just were like, fuck it, I got a deal. Like I remember there was some adult movie that, not like pornographic, but it was adult as in it had like scenes of breasts and stuff like that. And then I remember I was watching it with some adults, and then a nude scene came on, And then it was like on VHS or something. And then the woman who was watching me, I'll never forget this. She's like, "So tell me about what school is like for you." And she's trying to distract me from looking at the screen like I'm stupid. I don't know what she's doing. You know, like I'm young and I want to see the boobs. So I'm trying to answer real fast and turn around. And she goes, "So like, what's your favorite subject?" And it's like, but something about just stopping the TV wasn't an option. Like, she still wanted to watch what she wanted to watch. So she'd rather like play this kind of game. You know what I mean? Like they would do stuff like that all the time. We would just see wildly adult and inappropriate stuff. And it went with the books too. Like when you would go to your like elementary school or junior high or high school, or actually high school's probably old enough, but like I remember my junior high elementary school library, they had Stephen King books, and the Stephen King books were like really terrifying. They used to give us nightmares. And they would have all these books, like they would have some young adult books, but they did mix in a lot of books that I think were really damaging to kids. Like, that's why Gen X was like so weird. Like we all read Stephen King from like a really young age. And now kids don't really do that. Like kids started getting stuff like they're their own youth-friendly version of Stephen King, like Goosebumps, you know, and things like that. Like a lot like the millennials and younger kids, like but it was like we didn't have enough kid-only stuff either in books or in TV or movies. So you would just end up seeing, and again, we had weirder adults too. It's weird because in one way, people think of older generations as being more strict and more rigid and prudish than newer generations of parents. But in other ways, they were way more loose. Like they would just let us watch things that we just shouldn't have been watching. Like I used to get taken to rated R movies all the time by older family members, aunts, uncles, parents. I saw Nightmare on Elm Street in the theater as a kid. Like it was, it was just, and they don't really do that anymore. Like parents now really try to make sure that the kids watch, and I think it also started with Harry Potter too. Like, the idea of we really need young adult stuff. We need stuff made for kids, and you start getting channels like Nickelodeon. You start getting channels like Cartoon Network. You start getting all these channels. You start getting YA is like a true industry. Like when I was growing up, there wasn't that much YA. Like most of the YA was decades old. Like there was new YA, but YA came out so sporadically that you would have some YA. Like I grew up in the 80s. You'd have some YA, young adult stuff from the 80s, but you also had from the 70s, from the 60s. Like we all read Charlotte's Web. We all read The Outsiders and all this stuff. But now, like, they can fill up a kid's library with nothing but new woke YA that just came out in the last 2 or 3 years. Same with the content. You can fill up a TV channel with a whole bunch of stuff and never have to play a rerun. Once. Yeah, I think baby-based kids count, especially because it was a cartoon, so the parents really didn't care. They're like, "Oh, it's animated." Like if anything was animated, then that's another thing parents just think was okay. They didn't really. The same here. I remember adults playing Millie Jackson for me too, and it's like they wanted to hear it, so it was like, "Fuck it," if I was there, like whatever. So I think there were two things that kind of forced us to see things in a different way. Like there wasn't enough kid targeted stuff for you to watch. You always had to watch and read stuff above your age range that you had no business. Like I remember as a kid I watched On Golden Pond. It's a movie with a bunch of seniors and these old white people and stuff like that, and they're middle-aged kids. with Henry Fonda and Jane Fonda, and that was like a huge movie. A lot of black people and people of all ages like watched it. Like we just kind of watched what our parents watched, just because. And it wasn't like we wanted to be like our parents, or we're like, our parents are so cool. It was like there just wasn't shit to watch. You just made yourself. You had a patience and an open-mindedness that I'm not saying is because we were better than later generations or whatever. Like if we grew up with the same choices, if I could have watched glorified toy commercials for 24 hours a day, like things like Transformers and G.I. Joe, I would have probably done it, but we just didn't have that option. Then you would learn to like things. So we would try things from different age ranges, but we would also try things from different eras, because part of the thing is like we just didn't have enough TV to watch. So it's like new programming only happened from 8 to 11 every single night. And then half the year, it would be reruns. You only had new episodes like from September till May. And then it'll just be like repeats. The rest of the time, it's all like reruns, Gilligan's Island, I Love Lucy. Even though color TV was a thing, we watched a lot of black and white shows because of reruns. They didn't colorize them. So we had the patience to deal with black and white. The Brady Bunch. I think I already said Partridge Family. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., I Spy. Like you watch, I don't think we even really fully understood that they were old shows, really, you know? Yeah, so we were forced to watch things from different eras and be able to deal with the pacing of old eras, the slang, the different styles, the different values, you know. So there was that. We watched Tom and Jerry cartoons that spanned from the 40s to the 80s. Same with like Bugs Bunny stuff. You know, you could. And then again, we watched things that were new, but from all different age ranges, and stuff made for women, made for men. Like I remember, a lot of us used to watch Designing Women and Golden Girls. Like teenage boys would watch Golden Girls and Designing Women, and it wasn't considered like a sexy thing to do or whatever. You just yeah, Get Smart was another rerun. Yeah. So it was, and I think a lot of that continued to a degree with millennials, but less so, because you started having things that you can just watch kiddie stuff all day. But I think the kind of millennial that's being discussed in the Millennial Writing video that we're watching, let me put it back on the screen, I think it's the type of millennial that is of the age where cable TV and was plentiful enough and omnipresent enough such that a lot of people grew up with three big sources. I think there's three big sources of millennial writing. There's the Disney Channel, there's Nickelodeon, and there's Cartoon Network. And they're all slightly different. And you get a slightly different personality with each one. The Disney Channel sitcom, I think, was the most cheesy, the most wholesome. I think the Nickelodeon one, because that guy was kind of a freak, you know, like the Disney Channel one's like more likely like, you know, your parents are married, you know, you have a kind of stable, you know, really normie worldview, and you're a little like goofier, you know. It's kind of like Full House, the sitcom on steroids, you know. And Nickelodeon, I think, had that kind of a goofy thing, but they were like a little bit weirder and a little bit more deranged. I think it's because that guy, Dan, whatever his name is, Dan Schneider, was like a low-key freak, and I think a lot of his weirdness was permeating it. And then I think the Cartoon Network people, I think, were what that generation's bohemian or alt was. Like they're like kind of alternative thing. Like that was kind of like you had a little bit more of an edge. Like because those Cartoon Network shows were really, I think out of all three, sadly, the Cartoon Network shows I think were the most creative, the most interesting stuff. You had stuff like Samurai Jack, Dexter's Laboratories, stuff done by Gendy Tarkovsky. Like Ed, Ed and Eddie was like a really weird show. There was Cow and Chicken with the devil always showing his butt. Like there was, I think it probably had the most quality. Yeah, so I think the Cartoon Network people are kind of like, they're edgelords, but they're also kind of like alt, because with Cartoon Network, I also include Adult Swim. So it's like Cartoon Network is what got people in America into anime. Like I think a lot of anime people got into it through Cartoon Network. And do you remember those Cartoon Network bumpers? They were very like kind of weird and surreal, and they had really cool music. Like they would have like Nujabes and Dilla music. Like it was, I think, the millennial version of being alternative, yeah. So I think out of the three sources, the best type of millennial writer is going to be the one who is more into Cartoon Network. But I think the ones who came from Nickelodeon might not be as bad. But the worst are the Disney Channel ones. And I'm putting a lot of thought into this. But if you ever see those Disney Channel sitcoms, they're written so badly. And I think I'm going to use Full House as an example. Full House was a show, and to a certain degree, Family Matters too. They were kind of corny and hokey. They were like, remember that TGI Friday thing that Gen Xers grew up with? But we knew they were corny, and we understood when an annoying character was annoying. Like if you saw a Kimmy Gibbler, or we saw Steve Urkel, like everybody was goofy, but there was like degrees of goofy. And even though people laughed at Steve Urkel or Kimmy Gibbler, it was well understood they're very uncool and it's cringe to act like them. And the people within the shows would appropriately act like these were annoying, cringe people. But I think with the Disney Channel show, those weird Disney Channel sitcoms, right? And the other thing is we had so many other shows to balance it out that we were watching as kids. So we knew that this was a kiddie, immature, goofy thing we were watching, because we also watched shows made for teenagers, made for adults, made for middle-aged people. So we kind of saw everything. So we could put it in perspective how people were acting in that show. And even within the show, it was put in perspective. Like that Kimmy Gibbler was like everybody on Full House was kind of goofy. It's like cut it out, and all that kind of corny stuff. But you knew they were corny because you watched all other stuff from different eras and stuff from different age ranges. And you also had people in the show calling out like the corniness. I think Disney Channel shows were like 80% of the characters were Kimmy Gibblers and Urkels. Like the shows would be 80% the most annoying, cringe people, but people were acting like, it wasn't that bad or it wasn't that cringe. Like I think because a lot of those kids watching that watched nothing but Disney Channel shows, they also didn't get a point of reference. You know what I mean? So I think they didn't realize like, okay, these people are annoying on purpose, and these characters that make the faces and make the goofy voices and whatever, like you're gonna get like beat up and made fun of if you act that way, or it's just very socially inept and cringe. Like these jokes aren't funny. These telegraphed punchlines, these laugh tracks. Like I think they grew up with a really, really bad sense of humor. I think when you see like all those millennial cringe videos online, and then the YA stuff was the same way. Like if you read a book like Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, a lot of people don't realize that was a YA book. Like the book was so good that a lot of adults, like they didn't like write down to you. And same thing with Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web was clearly for kids, but it was like a very it was something that really tried to mature you and like get you to deal with ideas of death and stuff like that. But what YA kind of ended up becoming, like somebody I think put it really well. It said yeah, the latest YA, I'm going to my family reunion where my most precocious nieces and my dumbest aunts are going to tell me what the latest YA they read was. You know, like it became this thing. I think what a lot of people thought, right? Like, okay, you could be like, I think being a millennial is the first time you can just really watch nothing but immature movies. Like there was a lot of movies made for you. When I was a kid, you didn't get that many movies made for you. Like but like, you know, you get an occasional once a season Disney movie, maybe All Dogs Go to Heaven, but they didn't come out that much. But you know, like with things like Pixar and all the Disney animated Renaissance and whatever, you started getting these things where the stuff was made for kids, and then they would put jokes on a certain level so that adults could not be bored too, and they can like get something out of it. So you had all this DreamWorks, whatever. So it was another example of the adults were like, a lot of times when my parents took me to the movies, I was forced to watch adult stuff. Once in a while, they take me to a kids movie. And then even then, a lot of times they would just drop me in the kids movie with like my cousins or something, and they'd go watch something else, and they'd be like, meet us in the lobby when we're done. Like, you know, but it became very normal, I think, you know, in the 90s and later, like the family would watch the kids movie, and you would know the kids movie would have dialogue and jokes that you could watch too. So you take, you know, the kids to the DreamWorks movie, the Pixar movie, the Disney movie, and like things started becoming dominated by the kids' taste, you know. Yeah, I would think so, because like I was too old for the stuff, but when we had like younger family members on, and you know that I told you that it became normal when I got older. I noticed for like the kids shows to dominate what the family watched. So I end up seeing the Disney shows and the Nickelodeon shows that the kids were watching, and I agree. The Nickelodeon shows did not seem as dumbed down, you know. But yeah, like it just became very normal for, I think, a certain generation of kids to watch a way disproportionate amount of kids only stuff, but also new stuff. Like they weren't being exposed to the humor and taste and aesthetics of previous generations. You can watch nonstop new kids content all the time, really, you know. And I think it's even like worse now. So yeah, I think that Disney Channel Kimmy Gibbler character humor, I think, really created a lot of what this video is talking about as millennial. This is Kenny.
And evil. They naturally cap it off with a girl power ending, despite how poorly they resolved the conflict between Ava and Lilith, you know, the protagonists of the story, and the brain-dead reveal of Tannis being a super powerful secret siren this whole time. And whenever they talk, they're always super verbose. They just keep talking and talking for far longer than is necessary. And if you have no clue what I'm talking about, don't worry. It's nonsense anyway. I think there's this famous post that pretty excellently sums up Borderlands writing. They can't go one line without stuffing it full of ironic observation as their form of jokes.
Yeah, someone mentioned all that. I agree, man. The early Nickelodeon stuff, like you can't do that on television, and all that, I think was definitely better than at. You can't do that on television was the first attempt at the kids SNL, and Alanis Morissette was on it. But you know what's funny too, right? Is like, think about it. how many of our celebrities come from Disney Channel, or I mean, to give you an idea of what a stranglehold it had on entertainment. Like, think about all the millennial age celebrities you can trace back to either Disney Channel or Nickelodeon. You know, there's Ariana Grande, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Victoria Justice. I think I already said Ariana Grande, Miley Cyrus, Keenan from Keenan and Kel, who's on Saturday Night Live now. Ryan Gosling. I think I said Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera already. There's definitely a lot more because I don't really know. Hilary Duff. But yeah, there's Nick Cannon. Someone said Coco Jones. Yeah, they had. There's a lot of celebrities that have there's a lot of celebrities I know of that I find out way after the fact had some kind of connection to one of those Shia LaBeouf. That's another one. Like, I'm sure we can name like a bunch, but for that millennial age, you know, from a certain age, from like, you know, 35 to 45, a lot of them started. Oh yeah, Amanda Seales comes from that. Like it really colonized a lot of kids. Keke Palmer, I didn't know she was from that. Yeah, but they groomed a lot of adult stars. Like a lot of stars are coming off of those channels. And anyway, I feel like the ones that grew up with Cartoon Network / Adult Swim came out to be the most interesting writers and media people. I think the Nickelodeon sitcoms and most importantly, the Disney Channel sitcoms were the absolute most brain warping. Someone said Raven-Symoné is meant to the style of acting. Yeah, Raven-Symoné's tough because she didn't really start there, but she did end up there. So yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Normal line would be like, if you can get some fuel canisters, then I can reactivate the main generator and get our shields back up. I mark the objective on your map. Versus the Gearbox line, hey buddy, great job killing those mutants and all. You're really good at that. Shooting things, that is. One problemo though, as it turns out, a bunch of monsters on this planet are going to tear our eyes out if we don't.
So what he's describing is the modern millennial writing in video games. Like, this sounds like something you can see, like a very spunky. I think spunky is a good word for a lot of what Disney Channel characters presented as charm. Like this kind of annoying, you know, a spunk. But yeah. Listen to this. He talks about what game narration used to be like and what it's like now, you know, when it's full of ironic observation as quote unquote jokes.
Ironic observation as their form of jokes. The normal line would be like, if you can get some fuel canisters, then I can reactivate the main generator and get our shields back up. I mark the objective on your map. Versus the Gearbox line, hey buddy, great job killing those mutants and all. You're really good at that. Shooting things, that is. One problemo though, as it turns out, a bunch of monsters on this planet are going to tear our eyes out if we don't get the shield back up. And this is just my opinion, but that's going to suck. Not having eyes sounds terrible. Like, how am I supposed to read my collection of bodacious space babes without any...
Both. He makes it clear that even though he calls it millennial writing, not everyone who does it is millennial. It's just a word that he uses because you know, they're the age that's the most overlap with it. I believe he says that elsewhere in the video. Like, I think it hit critical mass with millennials. I don't know if you were here for the beginning, but we were talking about how like certain like segments of Gen X, you know, had this aesthetic, but by the time millennials came up, it was the dominant aesthetic. And then my theory that, especially because of things like Disney Channel, things that were written for him.
Flipping eyeballs. So here's my brilliant plan that I got written on this here napkin. I won't go on. You can pause and read the rest of it, but you get the idea. Now, imagine everything about Borderlands 3 writing, but worse. That is Tales from the Borderlands. The worst thing about Gearbox is that they just don't get the memo. Are they addicted to sniffing their own farts or something? Why aren't they trying to improve their writing after literally everybody criticizes it?
You are good ex, who dis?
They assassinate the character of Reese. In fact, he's basically a different character entirely to the one from Tales. Now he's the corporate asshole, basically taking on the exact same role as his enemy in Tales. In Borderlands 3, there was some gag about how his favorite frozen yogurt place got destroyed.
Well, that's it. Say goodbye to your favorite Frogurt stand.
Not friends, Frogurt, anything but friends, Frogurt. They give you that.
Oh, I thought of another good example from Nickelodeon. Things like Invader Zim and what else? There was another one. There was Invader Zim and there was Ren and Stimpy. Like I feel like Nickelodeon had a lot of like weird alt stuff too mixed in. Nickelodeon was kind of like a bridge. Like they had a lot of like the corny tween sitcom thing, but then they also had like some interesting animated stuff. But Disney Channel to me is just 100% bad from what I saw of it.
Oh, I can just imagine it. Some 30-something with an English degree paid for by their parents whose greatest trauma, besides getting trolled on Twitter, is their favorite food place which they would visit in between sessions of making PowerPoints in their Mac shutting down. And they brought that trauma into the game. Now, apparently they thought this frozen yogurt gag was so funny that they had to revive it for the next game as the basis for one of the characters, as if it was some beloved gag. So this Frogurt place is on Promethea, a fictional planet that looks remarkably like San Francisco.
So somebody asked this, and you know what's interesting, and this is what I mean when I say like I don't think millennials like invented it. I think they kind of inherited it. I feel like Joss Whedon, who's definitely a Gen Xer, I think was one of the big culprits of this style of writing. You know, but a lot of millennials grew up adoring his writing from, you know, The Avengers and Buffy and, you know, a lot of stuff like that. So I think it really kind of cemented in their thing. But that would be my theory. If anybody has a different theory about where that so that happened, I think also it's like a perversion of like how Chandler used to talk on Friends. It's just like one character that kind of talked that way, but like a bunch of people started talking that way. And even on Friends, it was meant to be kind of like annoying. Like people used to find him annoying.
Francisco. And of course, it's very diverse, or rather, it reflects the demographics of San.
Oh, and this is something else that I think is very true about millennial writing that he's about to get to. They make everything into Brooklyn, San Francisco, Oakland, or Portland. Like everything has that feel. Like, for example, if you watch Game of Thrones, they'll have a place that's meant to be an analog for Africa. They'll have a place that's meant to be an analog for like Ireland. They have a place that's meant to be an analog for Brazil. They don't always do the best job with it. Sometimes they reduce places to stereotypes, but there's this idea that, okay, things have to make a certain type of sense. Like different countries should have different customs and different people, you know? And what happens in like millennial writing is because they need to make every era and every place politically correct, everything will be Portland, everything will be Brooklyn. Like you watch that like The Witcher, and there's like this racially diverse ragtag group of people in this country, but it's like, how did it end up racially diverse? Like it makes sense for us because we have a bunch of history that, you know, led to migrations, development, transportation. We have planes, we have ships. So people of all different races and different evolutionary tracks can end up in the same place. But this is something that's supposed to be taking place in like in alternative medieval world. Like how did this place manage to get so diverse? At least walk me through it, but they never explain it. It's just like every place, you know, is full of interracial dating, is full of progressive thinking, is full of like women who have the same jobs as men. Like nothing is allowed to be primitive or segregated or different. So it's like every planet is diverse, every country is diverse, every eras diverse. You go back into Viking times, and there's like a bunch of different race Vikings. One of them is like a black woman with dreads. Like they just put a bunch of weird stuff, and it's like it makes everything have this weird sameness. Like everything feels like you're just watching Brooklyn or Portland. It is very, very bizarre. Like I'm watching something that's meant to take place in like another planet, and it's a planet that doesn't have electricity, you know, and there's like a trans person, a black person, somebody, a fat person, a tall like everyone just looks like they're from a modern city. Like this type of heterogeneity, is that the word for it? That so like within the world looks like our world, but then within the world, every country looks like our world. Every planet, if it's like a space thing, will like, you know, like the planets might have their certain idiosyncrasies, but within that idiosyncrasy, it's like a Portland covered by fire, and then this one's a Brooklyn covered by ice. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's interesting what you said here, that it just looks like San Francisco, because that is a big thing they do now. So you get things like Bridgerton, where it just looks like, you know, a diverse modern community.
Francisco. If the point of representation is to introduce new and different viewpoints, then this is achieving the exact opposite of that. It feels like these stories only represent the experiences of young, wealthy, inner city tech people from coastal cities of America, an extremely small niche.
People say coastal elites, but I think it's a terrible word, because not everybody who thinks this way is either elite or from a coast. Like there are people, you know, within, you know, there's a lot of places that have like these kind of people. The term that I started using is metropolitan progressives, and or met progs for short. I like it better than coastal elites, because like if you're like an adjunct professor or a barista, I mean, you're not particularly like elite, you know what I mean? But you might look and act this way. Like it's not like everybody who like somebody who lives in a red state and owns a construction company, and you know, wears a cowboy hat, you know, and boots, but lives in a gated community and is rich. Like, are they more elite than like a barista who's like six figures in college debt and, you know, trying to get like an adjunct professor job or whatever? So yeah, rather than like this coastal elite thing, I like metropolitan progressives. But that's exactly what they make every community or every world or every IP, even if they take an IP that was written a certain way and it's from a different era, they will give it like a metropolitan progressive feel.
Twitter addicts.
Hey, Papa Girardi, I can smell your space calzones from here.
Ah, thanks. I need a new name for them.
Might also need to stop doing that problematic accent.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of the references and lingo just feel
You'd have to be specific because there's a time delay. So by the time you're talking, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I never know what the exact time delay is. Anyway.
out of touch.
Miss Johnson, do you got a cybernetic leg? That thing's straight fire.
Yeah, everybody talks like in that same way. It was one of the problems I was having with I tried to watch Across the Spider-Verse, the Miles Morales movie, and had great animation. The plot was, you know, pretty interesting, but you know, there's a lot of like annoying like dialogue. Like, you know, there was this Indian Spider-Man, and he's like, chai tea? Chai already means tea. You're saying it's like saying TT. It's like I've heard that joke a million times on Twitter. It's like the most low effort, like quirky, like it's not that clever. Like I hate that like style of banter.
Like they're trying to be younger than they actually are. A lot of the language feels like 5 years out of date. And there's a certain character design. The shaved on one side and long hair swept on the other, the brightly colored hair. It's extremely common. There are also adult characters who speak like children, or just generally speak in a really condescending or patronizing tone.
While I examine this unimaginably complex and priceless alien artifact, you may wait outside and steal anything not nailed down.
There was the new Saints Row reboot as well. We knew it was going to be terrible before launch, and we weren't surprised at all. They made the main characters into a bunch of broke college kids.
And to go back to the Chandler speak, like Chandler worked because he was the only character that spoke that way, and that was his thing. And even then, they would call him out within the show for being annoying. Like they would make fun of him and how he talked. They're like, "Can I be more annoying?" Like it was like a joke within itself. But when you have shows where there's like 8 Chandlers, and it's being presented as cool, like it's not being presented as annoying, but you're supposed to think it's cool. I think that becomes a problem.
They're all dealing with student debt and rent and complaining about capitalism. They try to borrow some internet lingo like wage slaves.
Yeah, like look at this guy. This guy just looks like he belongs in a certain milieu. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how this game works, but it looks like a post-apocalyptic type of thing, right? Like, I don't play games, but I mean, this guy just looks like, a certain type of guy you will see, in, a metropolitan progressive area.
Super verbose. They do not stop haranguing the player with dialogue, and they use expletives like they're meant to be edgy, or they're just funny on their own.
Goddamn fucking shitballs on a stick and a side order, a mother-loving shit-smothered, piss-covered ass crack!
That's something else that I kind of noticed too with Millennial Writing, is just excessive edgy cursing. And a lot of celebrities too, like for example, like we look at LeBron James and how much he curses, and it's very forced. It's something I have noticed. I think it extends to Black millennials too. Like I think that they use the N-word way too much, like way more than even we used them. And we're the first ones who kind of, I think, started the habit. But before, you kind of had to be a gangster rapper to be using it that much. Whereas like now, it's just like they all just run into the ground.
It's like they get
and I feel like Boondocks really normalized that. Like I think Boondocks really normalized just saying it all the time in mixed company.
Kick out of swearing for no reason. Also, it's super funny that characters are talking about their carbon footprint.
Your carbon footprint always matters.
So relatable, am I right, fellow millennials? People talk about that on Twitter, right? They really do talk about capitalism a lot. They don't really say much about it, though. They just say the word, and we're supposed to think, I don't even know, like, wow.
Hey, Chris, thanks. Yeah. I didn't know you were talking about. So yeah, that's a good idea. I will make a clip out of that.
Oh, you're really culturally aware.
I told you before, the idols are trying to build a post-capitalist society where money is not a concept.
The original series started as a GTA clone and got progressively more wacky and outlandish. The humor was extremely crass. It recognized the absurdity and cranked it up as high as possible. It was self-aware before self-aware humor became really tired. They certainly did make pop culture references, but like Borderlands, this style of humor was more apt in 2012. It feels like they haven't really grown since then. They've had to tone down a lot of the most vulgar elements of the humor from previous games, which just doesn't work because vulgarity was the core of the humor in them. And again, we see the same character design, the Skrillex cut, the dyed hair. You see it in so many games, it's like they're reading from the same guidebook. Now, something that feels similar, but is harder to place my finger on, is the new Wolfenstein games. The New Order was alright. Wolfenstein 2 started to introduce some weirdness, like throwing their fetishes into the game, but Youngblood is where the failure of the writing becomes really apparent. It's centered around these quirky twins who get up to silly antics in between bouts of killing people. It's strange how frivolous it is with violence. Of course, that certainly isn't a new thing, but in this game, the main characters seem to delight in it. That also isn't the weird part. It's that they delight in this violence, and there is nothing really wrong with it. They're not anti-heroes, they're just regular old protagonists. And it's just silly and fun. It's strangely flippant. I mean, the New Order wasn't like that. It did have over-the-top violence, but BJ Blazkowicz was motivated by a righteous fury and rage. He never really reveled in killing or celebrated it. There's also the loud equals funny yelling. Some of the new Wolfenstein writing just feels like the writers had some issues of their own to work on.
Yeah, the loud equals funny, I think, is definitely from that Disney Channel sitcom type of stuff.
Why is it that balls always used as some fucking default definition of badassery.
It feels like they wanted to make a political statement that they just weren't equipped to make. High on Life is another super obvious example. It has all of the same hallmarks, overly verbose characters, unnecessary swearing as if it was funny on its own. I mean, I like Michael Cusack. Damo and Darren at the train station is one of the most quoted videos here in Australia. But man, the knifey character didn't work. They had a cameo from Psychic Pebbles as well, who is usually absolutely hilarious. But in this game, I don't think the bit really worked. I noticed there's a certain vocabulary as well. It wouldn't be unusual to hear words such as weird or shitty. And it is weird that the dude who, well, you know what he did, is calling anyone shitty. This kind of dialogue is really common. I feel like High on Life could have done with an editor, somebody to cut like 90% of the dialogue, only leaving the best stuff in. As of right now, it seems like they believe that annoying equals funny, similarly to loud equals funny. Destiny 2 seems to have taken on some of this writing as well. Anna Bray is starting to sound like a Borderlands character.
My security frames are overrun. Is another example of your over-promise, under-deliver attitude.
Huh. None of that sounded like, Anna, please help me. I need you.
Oh God, I hate. There was a game that came out a couple years ago with a black girl protagonist, and I guess people were just so sick of this type of writing. It had a bunch of that type of dialogue, and people kept calling it Joss Whedon overkill. But even Joss Whedon, he knew how to let serious moments breathe. And like I remember Joss Whedon having a lot of that annoying kind of quirky, oh my God, so crazy dialogue. But when I tried to rewatch an old episode of Buffy or something, I was never like a big Buffy watcher, but I was rewatching it. I was shocked how much less of it there was than I remembered. Like I remember it being like wall to wall that. But he's become that anyway. Like the last thing I've seen for him was his version of Justice League, and he's like, I was surprised by how much restraint he used to have. I thought he always had no restraint, you know, but he actually wasn't, you know, even though I think he's kind of the godfather of a lot of this stuff, he wasn't like wall to wall with it, but he has since become a victim of his own excesses. Like he can't let a serious moment breathe, and he's always got to force like way too much humor in wiseassery and everything.
Would satisfy.
So quirky and sardonic. This type of delivery sounds condescending. It reminds me of the boss from Office Space.
Yeah. If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great.
I'll be honest, I do not see the appeal. And, you know, I can't really bring up Millennial Writing without at least mentioning indie Earthbound-inspired game that secretly...
You're asking, was that Rosario Dawson's likeness? I don't think it was. If it's the clip that you're talking about, I think that clip was the black woman from Mad TV, Deborah something. I forget her name, but I think it was her.
About depression and mental health. These tend not to have the exact same tropes. Now that I think of it, it wouldn't be unusual to find similar stuff in indie games. It's just that people in the comments are going to bring this up if you're going to talk about millennial games. So I think I'm starting to get a picture of it. The hallmarks of this style of writing that stick out to me from these and many more examples. The aforementioned vocabulary. Shitty, weird, gross, icky, yucky, yikes, my dude, my guy, y'all, and of course, decent human being. Another millennial phrase I tend to hear is, the bar is on the floor. It's funny how a lot of these phrases are kind of childish. I'm not sure whether they're trying to be condescending and infantilizing to others, or whether they are themselves infantilized. They so often sound passive-aggressive. Another millennial phrase that annoys me is do better or be better. Again, talking down to you. It's insanely condescending. It just seems like a failure to grow up. A lot of the humor seems like it's from the people who've struggled to grow up since 2012. It seems like they're emotionally stunted. And this is probably just me reading into it, and I see a lot of crossover with their being emotionally stunted and all of the pop culture references. It seems like some kind of identity that they're trying to cling to, that they can't let go of. I mean, Fallout 2, all the way back then, was full of pop culture references, but I don't know, back then, being a quote-unquote nerd was kind of a subculture of its own. It wasn't really something people aimed to be. It's just a label people got slapped with for the activities and subculture they gravitated towards. It was to make fun of them. Now, nerd is like a market demographic. It seems that being a self-admitted nerd and being obsessed with pop culture is based purely around cynical consumption nowadays. And obviously nothing epitomizes this more than the Funko Pop, which is like a religious icon for millennials. The pop culture obsession seems to stem from an inability or refusal to grow up. The kinds of references that were...
So the pop culture obsession, I do have a theory about that. I think everything was co-opted by corporations, and they were more immersed in big corporations than any other era, but I don't blame them for it. I think there wasn't as vivid independent scene. Like something that I think really kind of happened by the time millennials came up was a lot of Gen Xers and older millennials and whatever started getting corporate jobs, and they were better at having an ear to the street. Like, people don't really remember this, but corporations used to be really bad at keeping up with trends. Everyone in them was like way too dated. I think it's even worse now. I feel like corporations, thanks to social media and stuff, they're on a trend a week after it happens. And they're tweeting like slang and stuff, or they're using a meme within the same week it debuts. But it used to take years. I remember when breakdancing was in the street, by the time it hit like mainstream TV, no one in the street was breakdancing. Like we were doing the Kid and Play Kickstep. Like they would always be like way too late. And you had to be into independent things to be cool. Like, so you had to be kind of into these indie punk labels. All the rap labels are kind of independent. They would use big record labels for the distribution, but things like Jive, Cold Chillin', Ruthless Records, they were like, fly by night outfits. They were kind of like alternative clubs. There were like mainstream stuff was fun and it was great to watch, but you couldn't really be cool by watching mainstream things. And I remember like by the late 90s into the 2000s was when I think because they got better at hiring young people, or for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, but corporations got better at stuff, and indie became an aesthetic. Like, indie didn't actually mean anything independent. It just meant, like, for example, something like Miramax. Miramax became the face of like independent movies, but they were a huge studio. But what it meant, something A24 means now, like the movies cost a little less and they have the indie look, but they're not actually like independent. It's not like we're just a so fly by night rogue studio flying by the seat of our pants, Yeah, this is true for Black culture, but I would say for everything cool. Even though it definitely is true for Black culture the most, because Black culture is like usually the source of like 99% of what's cool. Yeah, this is true, but this is why I say there's a handful of Gen Xers who had the longest careers. I don't know why, but the Gen Xers who had that kind of snarky, whatever, like writing style, like people like Quentin Tarantino, people like Joss Whedon, people like Shonda Rhimes, they seem to have lasted the longest. Like, take someone like Cameron Crowe. Like, he didn't really write like that, and he like those Gen X who didn't write that way, people like Richard Linklater, they kind of just fade into the background and they pop up every now and then to do something, but they're not like the constantly working Gen Xers. I feel like the Gen Xers who were very career driven and were working heavy into the 2000s had this kind of snarkiness. It was in comics too. Like, I mentioned people like Brian Michael Bendis and Grant Morrison and whatever, like this too clever, too meta for school type of things. Yep. But even before they were sold to private equity, even in the beginning, they were always bigger than what indie should be. And the same thing with like indie, like Kanye West was considered kind of like backpacky, whatever, but he was on a big label. It just became, indie didn't just meant an aesthetic. And to take it back to, so I think it became very normal for millennials to think of being alt or indie as just like a look or a label, but being indie, you were just as corporate. Being alt, you were just as corporate as the person who wasn't alt. Like, you used to be actually corporate in your consuming practices. Like we used to also have, for example, in comic books, when I was growing up in the 80s, independent comics were like a real thing, and kids read independent comics. Like they'd be black and white. They would be crudely done. Some of them looked just like pure crap, but some of them were like really good. And you would, like the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a total independent comic that looked very crudely drawn. It was drawn like magic marker. And there were just all these fly by night. You go to the comic store and half the rack would be full of these weird independent comics that you would buy. You'd buy your Marvel, you buy your DC. Now people don't do that much. What started happening in comic books too, you would go to Marvel and read the Epic line, which is, it's Marvel Comics, but it's the more indie looking stuff, or Marvel Max, or DC has something called Vertigo. Like DC started co-opting the independent comic space by creating things that had that independent feel. So you would have something like Neil Gaiman Sandman. And what started happening is all the corporations started getting better at co-opting the spirit of what was independent and alt. You know, every big record label had their kind of like the grunge line or the indie rap line or whatever. You know, like stores started doing it too. Like I remember, if I wanted like a very independent or alt or out of left field record, I used to have to go to small record stores like Generation Records or Other Music in New York. All these places kind of closed down because what started happening is you start going to places like Virgin Megastore or Tower and stuff, and they would have indie stuff. They would even have stuff from local bands. Like all these places made themselves one-stop shopping. And I think so, like Amazon, like you go to Amazon, you can find some of the most obscure stuff on Amazon. You'll find like, you know, local bands. You'll find all types of stuff. Like they will have it. Virgin Megastore started doing that when it was still open. You know, yeah, like corporations starting the late 90s and going forward got way better at capturing the zeitgeist of what was punk, what was alternative, what was backpack, what was independent. And so I think there wasn't this conflict between being corporate and considering yourself alternative by the time millennials came around, because it wasn't hard to do. And going back to the Cartoon Network example, like Cartoon Network used to have really cutting edge music in their bumpers. You remember the bumpers? And I would discover all this incredible, weird, like lo-fi, hip hop, jazz, and all this stuff through the bumpers. And I was trying, I think there's one called Tomorrow's New Quintet. I used to find all these cool things, you know, but it's owned by Turner. It's owned by Warner. It's huge. And Cartoon Network, I think, started training people to not see a conflict between trying to be edgy and working with IP. You know, like the guy from Ren and Stimpy had a really edgy kind of style that normally would not be in a big company like Nickelodeon. But Nickelodeon was able to kind of co-opt that type of energy. Like the type of energy in Ren and Stimpy, you would find that back in the days in independent comics. But now, like, corporations found a way to capture like the spirit of things and absorb into the corporations. Then the guy who did Ren and Stimpy ended up doing a Yogi Bear cartoon. And the Yogi Bear cartoon was like really edgy and weird. And it would show like Yogi's butt, and it had like that Ren and Stimpy energy. There was an episode of I think it was Johnny Bravo that had like Fred Flintstone, and Fred Flintstone, it's really meta and adult the humor, and it's very like subversive. Like before, these weird independent like comics, like there's this thing called the Tijuana Bibles or something, I think so it's called, where they would like spoof Disney characters and put them in compromising and sexual and depraved situations, and Disney like would sue them. But now it wasn't uncommon for places like Disney or Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network to take established IP. You'd have a cartoon where they would imply that Shaggy was smoking weed. I remember that on Cartoon Network, they had some Scooby-Doo bumper where they showed that Shaggy just finished hitting some weed, and then actually it was Johnny Bravo. Fred and Daphne sneak out, presumably to have sex. You know, like they were able to start absorbing. Yeah, Harvey Birdman is another great example. You know, they would have this thing called Adult Swim, and they'd use Adult Swim and things like Harvey Birdman to take the childish characters and then subvert them. And I think that became a very big motivation to millennial writers. Like, oh, I want to take these sacred childhood things and then subvert them. Like that type of energy is what ends up leading to things like The Last Jedi, where they want to take Luke Skywalker and take the piss out of him. Like I think they got that from growing up with things like Cartoon Network and Harvey Birdman and Adult Swim and Johnny Bravo showing deconstructed subversive side of Scooby-Doo and things like that. Definitely saying Harvey Birdman, because that was a perfect example.
Funny in 2007 and tolerable in 2012 and just embarrassing now. There are other hallmarks, like letting you pet the doggo, because that's a Twitter account, right? Having quips everywhere that undermine dramatic moments. Having an easy mode called Tell Me a Story or Story Mode, letting you skip bosses or parts of the gameplay, making the game easier if you fail too many times. I also just wanted to mention a few tweets because people speak like this on Twitter, and I think that's where it comes from. And once you see enough of this, you start to recognize this style when you see it in media. Tuesday, the day you realize that nothing can stop you because you are a magic skeleton packed with meat and animated with electricity and imagination. You have a cave in your face full of sharp bones and 5 tentacles at the...
But this guy Chuck Wendig, he loves talking and writing this kind of cringe tweet style. Let me show this real quick. Hopefully it doesn't cause a copyright problem. But this is the example I'm talking about. So this is Scooby-Doo guest appearing on Johnny Bravo.
Let's split up. Now, hold on a second there, mister. We're going after some creepy ghost person
and Johnny Bravo was created by Seth MacFarlane, who did Family Guy. So you can, to give you an idea of like the guy behind it. So it was somebody who, and Seth MacFarlane does a lot of the same stuff on Family Guy. Seth MacFarlane loves taking, you know, sacred like childhood characters and making them do like perverted and violent things. But this is where he first started doing that. But you know, he had to build to it. Like Johnny Bravo and Cartoon Network won't let him do so much. But this is where I think he kind of got his chops. And then with Family Guy, he was able to really go to town with it. Which is another example of what I'm saying. Like these 3 things, like the root to a lot of stuff. Like since Cartoon Network is cartoons, it didn't really produce a lot of like celebrities like Britney Spears or whatever. But I do think if we were to search, I bet you a lot of talent behind like, you know, a lot of modern adult cartoons like Family Guy and stuff like that. You'd find they had some kind of weird connection to this stuff.
You want us to split up? Well, yeah. Want to get lost with me? I'll give you a Scooby snack.
Scooby, you and Fred check upstairs. Velma and I'll look in the basement.
Daphne?
I mean, Scooby, you and Velma check upstairs, and Fred and I'll look in the basement.
Yeah. So yeah, I think they grew up like normal. So like you get this kind of edgy, subversive kind of what passes, I guess, for the time is like an alt or a rebellious streak, but you're trained to channel it toward old IP, you know, and that's what people do now. People just want to subvert or do all their edginess, but within corporate stuff. Like I don't understand why you need, if you want to do something edgy and groundbreaking and that subverts expectations, why you need to do it on an old IP like Star Wars and ruin an old saga. Just do your own thing. But they don't want to do that. Like they, I don't think we're really they didn't really get their edgy streak from actual independent weird alt things. They just got that energy, but we're trained to focus it in corporate directions. And I think that's one of the reasons why they think in terms of good corporations and bad corporations. Like Adult Swim was a good corporation because they had great taste, and they had a great aesthetic, and they spoke the language of the kids. And corporations used to be really bad at speaking the language of the kids. I think millennials were the first generation where they had really savvy corporations that knew how to capture their language and be cool. Like something like Boondocks is, really trendy and cool. Like, someone like Aaron Magruder would have, especially making a show like that, would have never gotten like a mainstream job like that, especially doing that kind of humor. Oh wait, I forgot to put the screen on. Hold on. Here we go. Also, yeah, the ABC Muppet Show was a good example of that. That was actually funny, but it did have that energy to it. Yeah, it is related to the loss of the sellout concept that I've mentioned. You can look it up. If you Google Champagne Shark, if you search on YouTube, Champagne Shark selling out, I think it should come up. I don't remember this. What is Old School Afternoon? And earliest example of what thing I was talking about? Can you remind me? Yeah, Space Ghost Coast to Coast was another one of those kind of subversive things. Yeah.
Because you are a magic skeleton packed with meat and animated with electricity and imagination. You have a cave in your face full of sharp bones and 5 tentacles at the end of each arm. You can do anything, magic skeleton. Between Bernie, my ex-wife, the tenant from hell, and general chump fuckery, this has been a cromulent...
Oh, and something else too, right? We're talking about the influence Cartoon Network had, and we were saying how the influence that Nickelodeon and Disney Channel had, like the terrible humor and the cringe, like all these jokes that this guy's disgusting. That's straight out of Disney Channel sitcoms. Here's an example of a Cartoon Network thing. When I say that millennial humor comes from like those 3 places, Eric Andre and Z-Way, that's straight Space Ghost Coast to Coast. A lot of that weird cringe interview stuff, it's like Cartoon Network, but it's also an example of corporations taking that kind of indie energy, right? Like something like Andy Kaufman, the idea that I feel like Andy Kaufman is kind of the father of that weird, is it real, is it not, uncomfortable cringe, like humor, and the audience doesn't know who's in the joke. And then it's like, you look at millennials, and Eric Andre says up and down without even hiding it that he got his whole shtick from Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and he's like obsessed with it. And then Z-Way, I don't think Z-Way maybe even really knows Space Ghost Coast to Coast, but you see Eric Andre doing it, But yeah, I think a lot of that style comes from that. There's a lot of that kind of cultivated weirdness that they managed to mainstream, and you would never have seen that in a corporation before. And it's kind of interesting because even Andy Kaufman ending up on Taxi was an early attempt at that, but they weren't very compatible. Like he found the network and the corporate setting a little too stifling, and that they had to kind of dumb him down for him to play that character he was playing. I don't know if you guys remember the character Andy Kaufman played, but in that millennial age, in the 2000s, I think a corporation would have handled the Andy Kaufman way better. They would know how to channel it better. Like corporation was just so much more out of touch with edgy things, whereas like as time went on, they would still water it down, but water it down in a way that still kept a semblance of the edginess, in a way that a lot of these people could live with,
Crustable of a day. Tommy Needy Drinky. Kanye is a teeny weeny little baby bitch muffin. What you'll notice is the playground insults mixed with swearing, and they're talking in a baby language, like with these invented words that they just came up with. Beyond that, there's all the references to student debt. So relatable, am I right, fellow millennials? Ironic that the people who talk about representing broader viewpoints and life experiences seem to make the same few jokes that only appeal to a tiny group of people who are like them. Degree in English from major coastal cities of the USA. The student debt thing is...
Yeah, he's in the coastal cities, but again, I think Med Prague is a better... Oh, I never saw that show, but you know what I remember that also falls into this category too? And it also has to do with Adult Swim. Robot Chicken. A lot of these millennials getting hired to work on these corporate properties try to robot chicken it. How robot chicken works. They take something from your childhood and they think it's so clever to like nobody young or the original people who like, for example, I was reading a book about Marvel Comics, and it was like a biography of Marvel Comics. And one of the things that it said was that the people in the bullpen used to always draw perverted cartoons of the characters and make like funny scenarios, So you're not clever for having thought of this. Like all the old original people that wrote the very safe and sanitized stuff, they weren't just like too clueless to think of this stuff. They all thought about it. They just realized it didn't belong in the actual canon. Like, it was they did to entertain themselves, but these people like take things that, people in the playground say, like, do you think every part of Mr. Fantastic stretches? They'll take that and they'll actually put it into like the canon. Like, they'll have characters say something like, why does why does Susan Richards like read so much? And it's another character will say, well, you know how his body stretches? Let's just say all parts. And then the other character will be like, oh, like they'll put it in and it doesn't need to be in there. And it's not that clever, but everyone's thought of it. It isn't just because every little clever thing you think of that nobody said out loud, you don't have to be the first person to say it out loud. Everybody thought it, but they realized it was immature, and it didn't make them mature to introduce crassness into something made for kids. Like the only reason why they didn't put this stuff before is because it was made for kids. Like if you want to do this stuff, do it with something that's actually made for adults. But and that's what I can't stand about Robot Chicken. Like it's just one joke. Like, hey, remember this thing for kids? Well, can you imagine them doing this thing that we used to always like imagine them doing? Like imagine we made the subtext text.
Is also meant to be their social commentary. And that brings us to the juiciest part, the politics. A game like Saints Row keeps referencing capitalism, as if it was offering some sort of critique, but it's not really saying anything. A lot of these games seem to just reference political events or social issues because it's like they feel obliged to. They do the...
Well, and that's one of the things interesting about, because it's kind of cool to be anti-capitalist now, but these people are way too pro-corporation. They dream of working for big corporations. Like, what they really dream of is a good corporation or, a woke corporation. So they talk about anti-capitalism, but they don't actually want to engage in anything meaningfully anti-capitalist. What they want to do is do something corporate, do something very capitalistic, like, you know, work on a movie that costs, or a game that costs millions of dollars to make and needs to make millions of dollars to break even, like a total capitalistic endeavor, but just be the conscience of capitalism. They want to use the capitalism and the corporate stuff and be like the Jiminy Cricket on its shoulder, and you know, but they're scared to death to separate from the teat and not suck on the tit of corporations and capitalists at all.
These political things, not because they have anything to say, but because they think they have to say something. This is because of Twitter and just social media in general, or at least partly. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the complaints about how they're politicizing video games were coming to a head. We need to stop politicizing this escapist hobby. Then some Redditors from a place named Gaming Circle Jerk took these complaints and ran with them. They've been telling their singular joke for like 6 years now. Actually, Chud, games have always been political, then showing examples of old games and how they made some political statement. Every meme since then has been some variant of le gamers, le politics. It's also paired with the statement that all art is political, and games, as art, are making a political statement, even if they don't overtly comment on.
I think one of the problems with that argument, like, oh, such and such has always been political. Being woke is different than just being political. Being woke is being liberal in a very specific, this kind of childish and condescending and grating way. But woke people don't want that to be acknowledged. They want wokeness to be interchangeable with liberalism, because then they can hide behind run-of-the-mill liberalism. So, or run-of-the-mill politics. And I think a lot of the anti-woke people have a similarly poor vocabulary for what they hate. So they can't, like, anti-woke people don't do a good job at defining woke. They fall into the trap of using woke and liberal interchangeably when they're arguing, so they end up falling into this trap. But I'm gonna see if we can find an example. But the example I'm thinking of will cause a copyright strike, I think. Let's see. No, it was gonna be a scene from that TV show Supergirl, right? Where they're having a feminist scene, but it's really like preachy and annoying, and it's very like eye-rolling and cringe. Wait, I just have another example. This one is a shorter scene. It might work. It's from a show called The Originals. Let's see if we can find. Damn it! I can't find it. I thought of a perfect scene that shows the difference between being just liberal versus being woke, but I'm struggling. You know what? Never mind. I'll look for it some other time, and I'll use it in a different reaction video. Anyway, back to this video.
Anything. Saying nothing is a sign that you tacitly affirm the status quo. You aren't fighting hard enough against capitalism if you aren't speaking out against it. And it seems that they've reached game devs with this message. I think it's a common enough sentiment that many game devs feel obliged to say something, to make a statement about politics, even when they don't really have anything of value to say. And it shows. Oftentimes these political allegories and references to capitalism just feel phoned in, like in Saints Row. It isn't really saying anything, it's just making the references because I guess it looks like that's what people want when you look at social media. Am I right? Do my moots on the Bird app agree with this? We talk about this all the time. Same with Borderlands. It's maybe trying to make a statement about evil corporations. Corporate asshat. But you fight for corporations the whole time. And I just want to take a moment to compare the capital P politics in games versus how old games would present political issues. In all those older games, it was more of an idea that was presented. It was often aware of the nuance, and it didn't force your opinion on the matter. It'd perhaps present you with a choice and an ethical quandary to bring you to question your own beliefs. It respected the player's intelligence. Of course, the writers of those games had intent. They would frame things.
Okay, I found it. So this is a perfect example of the difference between being liberal and woke. But I think people do a bad job at differentiating, so they fall into this trap, right? Woke people want to make wokeness interchangeable with liberalism because then they can hide behind stuff. So this is what a woke person will say. If you complain about something being woke, they'll be like, wow, so I guess you have a problem with people having empathy. You know, I guess people have empathy. And it's like, no, you guys don't have any empathy. Just because you guys have positions that on the surface are anti-racist or pro-woman or whatever, doesn't mean you have actual empathy. Like, you guys want to destroy your enemies all the time. If someone said something 10 years ago, you want them to never work again. There's never enough that somebody can... You don't ever try to understand what type of extenuating circumstances might have made them do something you didn't like. You don't ever try to allow forgiveness and change to be an option. You want them to squirm forever. Like, you don't have empathy. Like, don't say you just have a problem with empathy. Like, you just, but you hide behind the same beliefs as empathetic people. Like, historically, empathetic people tended to be anti-racism, tended to be feminists, tended to be anti-colonial, and it was like they kind of realized, like, wait, if we choose causes that are normally associated with the good guys, then we're free to be total assholes and total bullies hiding behind that. So it's very important that they don't want a different name that conflicts with the name that the good guys use. Because if you do that, then you can criticize them. So they'll say stuff like, "Oh, woke is a dog whistle," or so, you know, they'll come up with all these reasons why you shouldn't call them woke, right? But they won't ever tell them what you should call them. Like, you know, Freddie DeBoer wrote an article. He's like, okay, if woke is a bad word, if it's a slur somehow, if it's a sign that I'm a closet right-winger, if it's a sign that, you know, I'm not saying the right thing and I'm politically incorrect, then tell me what word I should call you. And don't say that this is just regular liberalism, because this is a very new, unique thing. It is on the same side that liberals are traditionally on, but it's and he made a list of all the things that make wokeness different than regular liberalism. But no matter how many times you would ask, okay, just tell me what I should call you, they will never tell you what to call them, because what they need to do is hide behind, it's called a Mott and Bailey. A Mott and Bailey is when you have a kind of controversial or out there position, but then when someone tries to pressure you on your out there and controversial position, you hide behind a more benign, generic version of that same stance. That's harder to assail. Like there was this guy, he was a reporter, Chuck Ross. I say reporter in scare quotes because his reporting is like make work conservative stuff. Like, it's not real journalism. But his name was Chuck Ross, and he was like a piss poor arguer. But we used to be on the same blog comment section and stuff. I think he writes for Free Beacon now. He used to write for Daily Caller. He was hired by what's his name? I forget his name. The guy that used to be on Fox, Tucker Carlson. He was hired by Tucker Carlson to work at Daily Caller, right? But he would do. He's into scientific racism and race and IQ and all that stuff. And I'd written an article about like why all that's bullshit, and that, you know, it's something that like underachieving white men kind of use to feel better about themselves. And his response was, So I guess you have a problem with that, genetic differences exist. Like this is what race scientists always do, like race and IQ people. If you say that they'll say like, black people are genetically inferior in IQ. But if you push back against it, they'll be like, so you're saying genetic differences aren't real? They'll change what they're saying to the more generic, benign, and unassailable genetic differences are real. And they're claiming that you're a denialist, that genes cause differences. Like, so it goes from arguing about a specific difference that is caused by genes between black and white people to when you push them on it, we're just saying that genetics are real. Like they say stuff like that. And by implication, they imply that you think genetics aren't real. There's a guy who did a whole book like this. It's called The Blank Slate, where he believed in genetic determinism, and he created this straw man where he claimed everyone who didn't believe in genetic determinism believed in a blank slate. That basically genetics play no role in any development, and you could turn anybody into anything just with environment, and nobody believes it. That's the Mott and Bailey. The woke people do the same thing. The woke people, they have a very specific, toxic, condescending and insufferable and divisive form of pushing for the things that liberals traditionally push for, but they don't want to be recognized as distinct because then they can be criticized. They want to be able to hide behind the more benign version. So they'll say stuff like, well, I guess you wouldn't have liked Martin Luther King because Martin Luther King was woke. And it's like, no, he wasn't woke. He wasn't going around trying to drive people to suicide because they said something politically incorrect, like when they were 18 years old on a message board. Like he have nothing to do with Martin Luther King. Like Martin Luther King like forgave people for things. You never forgive anybody for anything. But this is an example of woke, not liberal. Yeah, totally. That separates wokeness from liberalism, performative theater. But what else separates wokeness from regular liberalism is it believes in two wrongs make a right. Like the old liberalism would be like innocent until proven guilty is wrong. And white people have long done innocent until guilty until proven innocent is wrong. And white people have long done guilty until proven innocent against minorities for way too long. Also, freedom of speech and curtailing it is wrong. And white people have long curtailed the freedom of speech of black people forever. And creating rules, creating environments where the burden of proof is on the accused and not the accuser, that's another part of being presumed guilty. That's also wrong. And powerful people have always been doing that to less powerful people and less privileged people. So we need to get rid of all those things. And the old liberalism with a capital L, like classical liberalism, was about erasing the unfairness in every direction. So bigotry is wrong, no matter which direction it goes in. Freedom of speech is, and curtailing it is wrong, no matter which direction it goes in. Guilty until proven innocent is wrong, no matter which direction it goes in. Burden of proof on the accused and not the accuser is wrong. Where you just accuse somebody and now the person being accused, it's on them to prove they're not a murderer or a rapist or whatever. That's wrong. We want to create these individual rights, that make it so and prejudging somebody on their race is wrong. So we shouldn't do it. Wokeness, in addition to the performative theater, wokeness is about I want to prove that I'm less privileged than you and that you have a history if not specifically you, but your people have a history of doing these things to me. So now I have the right to be revenge. Wokeness is not just about performative theater, it's about a spirit of revenge. If I can prove that you're part of a privileged group and I'm part of a less privileged group, and that your group has done bad things to me, now I want an unlimited, with no end in sight license to do it to you for the rest of the time. And there's never going to be an enough. So it's like women, now I can accuse you of something and the burden is on you to prove that my accusation is wrong. Otherwise, I'm automatically right. Like, I accuse you, I must be believed instantly. And you're presumed guilty. So you're guilty until proven innocent, and the burden of proof is on you. But it's okay, because if you say it's a woman doing it to a man, now it's believe women. And men have traditionally abused women in the court system. So wokeness is like, turnabout is fair play. I, as a black person, can prejudge you as a white person, and I can openly discriminate against you. And, you know, if you say, hey, that's wrong, they'll be like, no, it's okay if I do it, because you need power to be prejudiced. So because I'm less powerful than you, I can engage in this behavior against you, because turnabout is fair play. And you just have to sit and deal with it. Like, see, that's not like regular liberalism. Liberalism, the classic liberalism, the capital L, is about, in theory, erasing injustice in both directions. Well, intersectionality, I think, is part of wokeness. I think one of the reasons why woke people like intersectionality is because it gives you an easy mathematical equation for seeing who's the less powerful person in any equation. So therefore, paradoxically, I'll give you a mathematical equation to always know who's the less powerful person. And hint, hint, it's always going to be you, practitioner of intersectionality. And you'll now have a license to bully. I mean, I think it all overlaps with it. You know, it all overlaps with it. Like, affability politics means fuckability politics. But okay, fuckability politics and that kind of or what people call desirability politics. I coined fuckability politics, and then it actually became a real thing, and it became desirability politics. It's the same thing. Like, it's doing what incels and entitled men did with women. Like, you know, I'm entitled to have the kind of partner and relations that I want. And, you know, the classically liberal way would be like, you know, nobody is entitled to anybody's attention. No one's entitled to sex or relationship, whatever. But desirability politics is basically, I'm taking the incel worldview, and the incel worldview is still wrong if a man does it to a woman, because men traditionally have more power. But I'm creating a framework where I, as a woman, can complain and demand that men fuck me. But it's okay, because here's a history of oppression. Have you ever noticed, like, woke articles always have a history lesson in them? There's a segment of a woke article or woke think piece that always has a history lesson. Like 2 or 3 paragraphs is a history lesson. We're gonna break down some articles at some point, and I'm gonna show you. But we did an article breaking down woke articles on the we did a podcast breaking down woke think pieces. I did it with Vita on the main podcast, and I was showing Vita there's always a history lesson. The history lesson is a justification for the revenge, right? Now, I described some of the ways in which wokeness is tangibly different than liberalism. And as such, it should have its own name, but they don't want it to have its own name, because once you define it correctly, and give it a name, now we can't hide behind the more benign liberalism. Just like the race scientists, you know, we try to push him on, you know, his belief about race and IQ, tries to hide behind general genetics and acts like you just don't believe in genetics, or like you're taking issue with the benign statement that genetics plays a role in differences. Like they similarly do the same thing. If you try to push them back on a lot of the weird, vengeful, and toxic behavior, they'll be like, so I guess you just don't like empathy, or you just don't like equality, or I guess you just don't like people fighting for the underdog, you know? So stop being racist so we can have sex. So this is an example. Like, so these people, like in that video, will say, that video says that these people will be like, oh, comics have always been political. Video games have always been political. And that's an example of, oh, I guess you just don't believe genetics matter. Or, you know, like, the problem isn't political. It's about a certain way that you're being political and the vengeful spirit. So this is an example. Like, I've seen a lot of shows back in the day that had feminist moments and feminist, you know, segments or whatever. But this is, I hope this has a whole clip. This is how a woke show will handle it.
Apparently.
Oh, damn it. It cuts off too soon. I mean, it starts too late. Right. It's the right segment, but it doesn't show the whole part. Let me try it again. Okay, I think this will do it. Oh, hold on. Damn it, I can't. I built up this scene and I still can't find the correct. It's a scene where they try to stick it to a sexist at a carnival. Okay, here we go. I found it. Sorry for the wait. Here we go. So check this out.
Bon. Ladies want to test your strength? Or are you too delicate?
Okay, so this guy is taunting the women about testing their strength. Now, I get that you want to say that there's jerky men out there that you know, think low of women, but you create this kind of ridiculous straw man. Like, what kind of man, especially a sexist man, is gonna taunt a woman about doing a strongman test? Like take a look what he's taunting her about.
All right. Test number 2. Make the bell ring. No, anyone.
So these girls have powers, apparently, right? So he's taunting the women that they're not strong enough to make the bell ring with the hammer.
And do that. I want you to practice controlling your strength. Get as close as you can to the top without actually touching the bell. Closest wins.
So they're gonna show him what they can do.
Okay. I'll be your way, darling.
So, okay, this big muscular guy is taunting a 95-pound girl for not being as strong as him. So she does it with one finger. He's like, oh, holy crap, how'd she do that?
Your turn.
She breaks the whole machine.
2, 0.
Sorry about your little tower, darling.
Okay, so that's supposed to be the feminist moment. And it makes no sense because it's one thing if you had, like, say, a guy in law school, and the woman is set like in the 60s, and she's the first woman in the law school, and there's no reason to believe that a woman can't be as smart as law as a man. And you show the story of her. Well, first, the bias is realistic. You can see some guy, you know, saying, "Hey, women can't be good lawyers," and, you know, saying she belongs in the kitchen, especially like in the 60s. And then it's a realistically sexist thing, and it's something that a real woman can do. So it's you can show her studying hard and becoming the valedictorian and being the top law graduate out of the class. Like, that would be a nice political thing. But the woke thing has this kind of weird exaggeration to it that is like, it doesn't make sense. Like there's a reality denying aspect of it, where it's like no limits, no categories, nothing should matter. Like, there's no genetic differences between men and women. There's no you have to entertain every piece of equality I put up. So somehow, first, but also your enemies have to be so caricatured. Like, every sexist, every racist, every whatever has to be such a 24/7 all day long caricature of what a racist or sexist is. Like, they just wake up all day just being bigoted, you know? So this guy's not taunting her unfairly about something that women can do as easily as men. He's taunting her for something that there's no shame in a woman not being able to do. But also, women really can't usually do that. Like, a 95-pound woman usually can't hit that carnival thing and knock the bell up. But we have to somehow pretend that this is like the normal thing that a sexist would do. Like, you know, like a sexist will do 3 plates on the bench press and then ask a 100-pound girl, hey, little lady, can you lift this? Like, you know, and taunt her for not being able to do it. That's who he's gonna flex on about a feat of strength. And then there's this kind of like assholery, like they broke his machine, right? That's his livelihood for the rest of the day. Is that guy poor? Is that, you know, does he have a family support? Like, there's no proportionality. He said something that was sexist, you know, and now you get to break his money-making thing for the rest of the day. And he shouldn't have called you darling. Like, you know, like, that's the kind of stuff that I think people are talking about when they complain about woke politics. There's this kind of vengeful, but also like irrational spirit to it. You know, like the things in question oftentimes will actually be like rational limitations that somebody's talking about, and you're not supposed to say it, you know. Anyway, back to the millennial writing thing. That's why I say I really hate this kind of idea of when they say, oh, such and such has always been games have always been political, or comics have always been political. It's like, yeah, they've been political, but they didn't have this particular voice. But I also blame it on right-wing and anti-woke people too, because a lot of them generally are racist and generally are sexist. They do actually hate a lot of them do actually hate just regular run-of-the-mill liberal stuff. So they will also be guilty of lumping the stuff together. But for the people who don't hate liberal stuff but hate woke stuff, they get kind of caught in the middle. Like for someone like me who likes liberal ideas, likes leftist ideas, but hates the woke iteration of basically practicing like revenge and spite and a will to power under the guise of liberalism. People like me get drowned out by like the chuds of the world who become like, you know, the face of hating wokeness. Like a good example of woke versus left. Watchmen by Alan Moore is leftist and anarchist, and Watchmen by Damon Lindelof on HBO is woke. It's you know, basically intersectionality. It's like so in Watchmen the comic, Alan Moore says that nobody should wield this power. Who watches the Watchmen? Basically, if you give people power, who's going to police the people with power? That's what the Watchmen is about. Who watches the Watchmen? If I appoint you to Watchmen, if I give you the powers of a god, if I give you the power to arbitrarily declare right or wrong and say who's just and unjust, and you know, unilaterally decide fairness, who then is policing you? So nobody should have this power. That's the whole lesson of Watchmen. When you get woke Watchmen, it becomes, hey, white people did Tulsa, Oklahoma. White people did this. Here's the history of you know, racism and sexism and all this stuff. So basically, the power of Dr. Manhattan that used to be in a white man is best suited in the hands of a black woman, because that's intersectionality. And a black woman, because she's the most oppressed, can be the one most trusted to she's the one that deserves, like, white people have ruled too long, and we've been oppressed. So justice is, now we have the power. We get to be the Watchmen. So instead of who watches the Watchmen, it's who gets to be the Watchmen. I'm jealous and spiteful and feel mad that you, as a white man, you've already had everything for too long, and now you get to be chosen to be the first God in human form. What about black women? We've suffered more, and also our suffering makes us, and our oppressed status makes us inherently more moral and more trustable with the power. So two wrongs make a right. I want to have that power. I deserve it, and that's basically the lesson of it. So it's two different things. But the woke person who defends Watchmen, if you say to them, "Hey, this is woke, I don't like it," and it's like, "Oh, well, Adam Moore was woke too," you know, and he hated racists just like Damon Lindelof's Watchmen too. I guess you didn't like Alan Moore's Watchmen either, you know, because he was left wing and he hated bigotry and racism and talked about bigotry and racism in the work. But they want to hide the fact that the value, the motivation, the spirit is very, very different, and it's a lot more toxic and vengeful. Oh crap! The video is not playing. I thought it was playing. Sorry, man. I'm on amateur hour today. I'm messing up a lot. I don't know how long it wasn't playing, so let me back up a little bit. I don't know how much you guys missed.
It feels like a cynical reference to current theme. It's often things which do not suit the setting. and mutants. There were, of course, ethical you to question your own beliefs. It respected the player's intelligence. Of course, the writers of those games had intent. They would frame things in such a way that it made their ideology seem favorable, but it'd never force your hand, and it never felt like they were trying to force any message. The political message that could be gleaned from the game arises naturally as a result of the setting. Contrary to what Redditors claim,
big time.
Fallout was not created as a political allegory. It was, first of all, a dumb, absurdly violent, ridiculously bleak game with crazy guns and mutants. There were, of course, ethical quandaries and political dilemmas presented as part of the setting that could be applied to the contemporary world. It never portrayed communism favorably. It didn't really say much of anything about it. It was mostly focused on America and American culture, and any of the critiques rose out of that setting. Now compare it to the politics in current games. It often feels like a cynical reference to current thing. It's often things which do not suit the setting. It never explores any ideas in depth. It simply tells you.
Well, yeah, that's something I said too about a lot of this stuff. They introduce themes, but they never actually really go into them, or they just kind of name drop them to say, hey, we talked about this theme, but they never like revisit them. They never really deconstruct it and get very nuanced about it.
Things rather than presenting something and allowing you to think about it. I think that's the crux of it. It's about respecting the player's intelligence, allowing you to work things out on your own, to choose for yourself, to come to your own conclusion. Of course, we can't have people making their own choice nowadays. They might make the wrong one. I think condescending sums it up perfectly. They think you're stupid. They're also kind of pretentious. A lot of this.
I think not trusting you to make a choice is a very apt thing. Like sometimes it is hard to trust the audience. Like when Alan Moore made Watchmen, he trusted that they weren't going to like Rorschach, and a lot of people did like Rorschach, but he was trying to give all sides and hope that the audience chose what he thought was the right thing. And unfortunately, he made Rorschach too cool because he's just a good writer. So he makes even the characters that he isn't sympathetic to three-dimensional and able to be liked, whereas these guys don't trust the reader to come to the quote-unquote right choice. But on top of that, they're also bad writers, so they're trying to blatantly steer you in a very heavy-handed way to the character they want you to like. But because they're bad writers and also unlikable people, their attempts to make people likable backfires, and they make you like nobody.
Political writing presents the most basic opinions and acts like you've never heard them before, like they just blew your mind, like it's something revolutionary. Now, why did millennial writing rise in the first place? I legitimately think it is Twitter. Look, for a business's continued survival, it needs to adapt constantly. When you stop growing, you start dying. So you need to look at current trends. What is an easy way to see current trends? Why, the way everyone communicates, social media. I think that writers, devs, and producers are getting their idea of what constitutes current trends from Twitter, which I think is really misguided, for the simple fact that Twitter does not represent broader society. Most of what you'll hear on Twitter comes from a very small, very vocal minority. And hey, for a while, the FBI was basically deciding who is and isn't allowed to have a voice on that side. I think that producers should look elsewhere to get an idea of broader society, somewhere besides social media. It only elevates fringe voices. I guess this does kind of destroy the whole argument that Twitter is just a private company which doesn't really control much of public discourse.
Okay, I think that's pretty much enough. I think you get the point. There was one more video I wanted to do, but that one went pretty long. This is only 12 minutes. I'm not going to do the whole thing. Let me just try to speed run through this one. This one is more of like a parody, but it talks about the same stuff. This one's called How Millennial Writing Revolutionized Storytelling, a masterclass on why it works. April Fool's 2024. So this is a sarcastic video. Let me know if you can hear the sound.
Hi there, Trip here with 3 Ps. What is serendipity? Google defines serendipity as the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. What does this have to do with the video? Nothing.
He's making fun of millennial writing, but he's also making fun of essay videos. You know, commentary videos, like kind of the breadtube stuff. So just so you can understand what's about to happen. So that's why you open up with the pointless definition, just to make it sounds smarter. So he's making fun of a particular topic, which is millennial writing, but he's also making fun of the kind of commentary YouTubers who enjoy doing explainers on millennial writing. So this is like a two-level parody.
I just wanted to prove to you that I am smart by starting my video with a definition that is a complete non sequitur. As a millennial myself, I believe myself to be the authority on this matter. Today, I'm going to teach you how to write the best story for a modern audience. But first, a word from our sponsors.
This video was brought to you by Kick Puppies Therapy. With KPT, I can be linked up to a dubiously accredited therapist who can point me to a way to end my self-inflicted suffering caused by...
So I think he's making fun of how a lot of these kind of woke channels accept advertising from BetterHelp and other dubious therapy things, you know, kind of show the hypocrisy.
My own self-destructive tendencies through morally unethical means. If you're about to blow your brains out, they'll have the utmost respect for you by telling Facebook and publicly campaigning for you to be put on a government watch list. You know, for your mental health. The best part is that this can all be accessed from my phone and paid for through Google Pay or Apple Pay. HIPAA guidelines are a suggestion and are a hindrance, not a safeguard. So if you want the worst possible healthcare service in the history of this godforsaken planet, use KPT so you can be put on a list, have all of your rights stripped away from you, and be thrown in a mental asylum where you'll be treated like subhuman gutter snipe filth. And before I forget, use my promo code, Capitalism Sucks, for 10% off 1 week of services. And now, back to the video. Now, much akin to the red car law, there is Friedrich's principle. And using Friedrich's principle, we can begin to understand where to start. And in order to...
So these principles that he's going to make up, they're all just made up principles. They're not real writing principles. But, you know, again, he's making fun of a certain type of critical commentary YouTuber and how he do stuff. So that's why he's making up these. So in case you want to look up Friedrich's principles, I don't think you're going to find it.
Start, you must understand one thing. Key. The key to a good story is comedy. The key to comedy is to never shut the fuck up. Silence allows your audience to experience other emotions besides happiness. Unhappy emotions are uncomfortable, and that's not good. Now, never being quiet is important, but we must discuss what is being said in the non-quiet. There are 3 key assets at your disposal that are key to the success of your key story. 1. Your jokes need to have some social commentary. How can we do this? Use any of these buzzwords and your dialogue instantly has witty social commentary. Capitalism, gentrification, colonialism, rights, establishment, the system, oppressors, privilege. You get bonus points if you can combo them up. Do you need to know what these words mean or how to use them? Of course not. You only need to appear intelligent, not actually be intelligent. 2, you must point out when something absurd or outlandish happens. Every time. No.
Yes, this happens a lot. Like, there's this kind of feeling of not trusting the audience. But I also think, again, that comes from the Disney Channel level writing. Like, they used to always spell out what was happening, like the wacky character. They did practically, like, you know, wink at the screen, and all subtext is made text. I think it's one of the worst issues, one of the worst things that happened from people giving kids too much age appropriate stuff. I think people thought, I remember when Harry Potter first came out and all these kids were reading Harry Potter and not reading adult books, and there was this big outcry of people saying kids are reading too much YA, and they started calling Harry Potter a problem because that's all kids wanted to read. The books were like huge, and the defenders of it were saying, no, like you're gatekeeping and you're trying to force kids to read things that aren't made for them, and kids need their own. The reason why kids aren't reading enough and that America is so illiterate is because kids are being forced to read things beyond their age level way too early and way too often. It turns them off from reading, and they become adults who don't like to read. And creating, like, they said that Harry Potter was going to be like a gateway book, like almost like a gateway drug. Like, by letting kids read as much, letting kids do all the choosing of their own reading, you know, and like no reading was bad, so they could read comic books and young adult and nothing else if that's what they wanted to read all the time. Because what's going to happen is it would develop a love for reading for them, and as they got older, they would end up getting into more adult books, and that didn't happen. By letting them read nothing but bad YA and like stunted development comic books, they just became adults who like things written on that level. So like when you read like a lot of MFA literature now that's supposed to be supposedly like literary or like adult novels, they just feel like YA with sex and politics in them, you know, or written on the level of a comic book. And I think that was a big miscalculation that they did. And I think the same thing happened with letting kids choose too much of what they want to watch as a kid and never force them in a situation where they have to like compromise for the TV or watch things that initially didn't jump out at them, but you know, might expand their horizons. So you just got adults who never grew past that Disney Channel humor. They just add sex and they just add like sex and drinking and cursing to. I think it's one of the reasons why they over curse too, because I think it's almost like they know on some level that what they're doing is childish, and they don't know how to make it seem adult. Like the only thing that sets it apart from a Disney Channel show are the sexual themes, the violence, and the cursing. So it's almost like, you know, they don't really know how to mature their voice because they didn't grow up reading mature works. So they just think, I'm going to write Disney Channel stuff, but loaded up with like sexual situations and cursing and women drinking like the show Fleabag.
No, you cannot come up with a different reaction. Self-awareness is always instantly funny. 3. An instant comedic moment can be created by making one of the male characters admit that they are insecure. Men being humiliated and humbled is always a surefire hit, and it isn't part of a weird sexual fetish. 4. Anyone with an Anglo-Saxon-based accent must be the most absurd caricature of that accent. An Australian cannot have a realistic accent. It must sound like, "Is it dead short supposed to be what?" 5. If something ends up not being that funny, and you know it's not that funny, just keep making the character talk. It will eventually be funny. If you're extremely desperate, make the character explain the joke. If that fails, make them over-explain it even further. If that fails, hold the audience at gunpoint and make them laugh. But there are times when the comedy must stop. Sometimes serious moments cannot be avoided. You always want these moments to be short and shallow, so the positive fun emotions can come back as fast as possible. During the serious part, you must take advantage of your audience's dwindling attention span before you need to start a fight scene, insert a fart joke, make something explode, or acknowledge that this is a serious scene through witty, funny, quippy, self-aware, quirky, witty, comedic, fun-loving, irreverent, witty, and most importantly, witty commentary. In this time, you must shove a lecture into the story.
Well, you know what's weird? They don't like graphic sex, but they like the reference that people are having sex. So, for example, one show that I really had this kind of Disney Channel, Robot Chicken, Nickelodeon type writing was She-Hulk. You know, we covered She-Hulk, how bad it is. And that was full of like gratuitous cursing. She-Hulk was always getting drunk and having, if you remember, she was having one night stands. She was talking about as Captain America, a virgin. So it's like it's hypersexualized, but it's chaste. There's no actual like physical, like I know what you mean, but they cut out the sex, but they kind of don't. Like they pay lip service to sex because they want to look grown, but you could also tell they're kind of scared of sex. So the sex is like kind of cartoonish and vulgar. Like it's not, there's no like intimacy to the sex. There's no vulnerability to the sex. It's just like cut away and have a one night stand, and then Daredevil does the walk of shame or things like that. Yeah, so you're right. Like they cut out the sex, but they also are obsessed with the sex at the same time, even though they don't really like explore. You can tell that the kind of thing is scary and icky, but they also want to They're obsessed with it at the
Story
same
isn't
time.
good if it doesn't contain a lecture of some kind. This lecture must make no fucking sense for the character in the story, and the person getting lectured needs to be a character everyone loves. I was stripped of love when I was a child, so no one should experience love. When the serious scenes start, just play really loud music and make a character cry for no reason. That does all of the heavy lifting. Of course, this world needs to be populated by a population of people, and those people are characters. Per the Hercules theory, a character is a person, but not real. Adhering to Friedrich's principle, your main character is the center of the universe, just like you are.
Yeah, it's like mentioned but never shown. But it's like it's okay not to show it, but it's kind of annoying that they're simultaneously obsessed with it at the same time. You know, like you're not obligated to have sex in a show, but if you're gonna have it, like, you know, handle it like, you know, maturely, or think the sex like sexy, and they don't. They have to make it like kind of clownish, or like a caricature of sex, like very they either make it like comical, they cut away from it, or they'll do it but they'll make it like animalistic. Like if you notice in especially if it's interracial sex, like in Watchmen and in Lovecraft Country, there was a lot of this kind of trashy actually, it wasn't just interracial sex too. It's especially sex with a black man. They had the character Tick, who was played by Jonathan Majors, and the sex they were having was like really animalistic. Like it was like he was kind of like a bedbug. It was very, very bizarre. And the people who wrote the show, they didn't really seem to hold black men in high regard, but they did seem to like them as sexual objects. So like, yeah, in Watchmen, there's like an interracial gay sex scene, and there's a scene of like and in Lovecraft Country, I think the gay father has some kind of animalistic sex, but she's straight presenting. He's a closeted gay man. The black gay guy in Watchmen, he was also closeted. So even though they were gay, they were also kind of straight black men, if that makes sense. So these straight presenting closeted gay men, when they had their gay sex, they had it in this animalistic way. And then when the character Tick had sex with the Journey Smollett character, it was also kind of animalistic. Like basically, for some reason, when it comes to straight black men, they will somehow get really trashy with that. That's the only time they'll get. But even then, it won't be intimate. It'll be like animalistic. I'm sure I could think of other examples if I try.
Your main character can never be in the wrong. The only person's trauma who is valid is the main character's. For all intensive purposes, your main character is...
I think a lot of it comes from Tumblr brain, because Tumblr, I think, trained people to fuse social justice, children's stuff, and porn at once in their mind, because Tumblr had very short posts and everything was melded. So you'd be scrolling your Tumblr feed and you would see like a porn gif followed by a panel of a Spider-Man comic, followed by a quote from Audre Lorde. And I think like it fused in the Tumblr brain. Like they had this cartoonish version of things that was overlapping on each other.
You make everything about your main character's appearance perfect, even when they are supposed to look imperfect. Make them perfectly imperfect by making sure their hair is perfect, their teeth are white, and they have no blemishes or scars of any kind. When it comes to their clothes, make sure they always wear a jacket and have their sleeves rolled up. Always make your character.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is.
Up and
I never noticed that until this video pointed out. But they do always have a jacket and the sleeves rolled up.
never talk about how fucked up it was. The most you're allowed to do is have the main character feel bad about it, but everyone is unconditionally okay with it. Hard work is not easy, and writing your story so your character has to work hard isn't easy either, so don't make them work hard. Just give them everything you want them to have on a silver platter. As much as the world in your...
And this is a problem with the show She-Hulk. She was instantly good at everything. Not just good at everything. She was better than the Hulk, who was doing it for longer. And the same thing for Rey in the Star Wars movies. She picked up being a Jedi instantly with no training. You know, she knew how to force hypnotize. She beat the well-trained Adam Driver character in the first movie before she even got trained in anything, which was stupid because where do you go from here? You beat the big guy before you even got training. What's the challenge going to be later on? And she was like, you know, already more of a natural than Luke Skywalker.
Your story should be about you. There are unfortunately other dumbass people and characters that don't really matter, but we have to work on them purely out of obligation. First rule, the female version of a male character is always better in every way. Female characters are...
And that's what I was talking about with the She-Hulk and Rey from Star Wars. But there's plenty of other examples.
Just as strong as male characters. Until they aren't for the sake of a joke. Honestly, everything is at the expense of any joke that comes to mind. Even character deaths. The only way for a character to have personality is to be an unrealistic cartoon person that could never exist in real life because it would be too fucking exhausting to be that much of a goofball in real life. And of course, you have to make a villain, per Glormfleem's decree. Although it is in direct opposition to Friedrich's principle and the Hercules theory, Glormfleem's decree overrules both. It all comes full circle here. Key. Marco's key is the practice of The key to a good villain is to make him weird and idiosyncratic. Just try your best to copy Handsome Jack from Borderlands 2 without any of the depth. The antagonist always has to be relatable. They can never just be a complete monster who is irredeemable, because the only villain...
From what I understand, Steven Universe was like a real pioneer in this, and that was created by somebody from Tumblr. But Steven Universe, apparently, everything people did, every villain, it was okay because they had trauma. So there were people that literally genocided like planets and stuff like that. But you'd have a heart-to-heart talk and you find out they had trauma and they had some kind of relatable problem. And then Marvel started doing this too. Every villain had some kind of relatable trauma. And if you look at a lot of the millennial era revisiting of classic stories in Disney, what do they have? A Maleficent. Basically, Angelina Jolie playing like the Wicked Witch. Like, I think that's what those movies are about, right? Is that who Maleficent is? I'm not sure which evil character she is, but you basically find out she's not so bad, and she kind of becomes like the hero. Like, if you ever notice, there's a lot of movies that come out that are about the villain actually not really being the villain. Wicked was in the 90s, and I think Wicked was probably one of the first ones to do this, but there's a reason why I think millennial audiences ate it up and it was brought back, because it fits in with this current era. You know, like she has trauma. She's actually not that bad. The villain is not the villain, but it's not just that the villain is not really the villain. The good guys that everybody loves actually was the real bad guy. So like, it's like the Cruella de Vil movie where somehow they made Cruella de Vil actually have trauma. Her mother was killed by Dalmatians. It's really stupid. I didn't even finish the movie. It was so stupid. So she has a reason for hating Dalmatians, but also the Dalmatians are kind of bad. Dalmatians, you know, are mom killers. They were just running wild. Just this came out of nowhere and killed their mom. You know, I feel like it's tempting to blame corporations for stuff, but corporations always sucked. Like, I feel like a lot of leftists and stuff, everything's about you've got to find a way to put it back on the systems. But you know, systems are never going to do the right thing. Systems are always going to protect systems. Like yeah, the faults of system is on the corporation, but what's the answer to because that's the problem with a lot of these people. They act like the solution to everything is to say it's not our fault, it's the system's fault, and badger the system to do the right thing. You know, so these are the people who will be crying all day about Target, and they'll be like, "Hey, Target, I thought you cared about black people, but you're getting rid of DEI. I guess you didn't really care." It's like, why did you ever think that they cared? Like, corporations are supposed to be bad. Corporations are supposed to only care about money, you know? But I think this knee-jerk thing that like this current crop does is, you know, you can't blame a person for anything. It's only the system's fault. So the only thing that you can expect from people to do is to badger the system to do the right thing, you know? And it kind of takes like the onus off of them, you know? Yeah, corporations are ran by people, and they hate the idea that corporations are people too. Like, I've had people do this a lot. When you bring up problems that the individual does to contribute, because, okay, where do you stop this? Like, what about a strike breaker? You know, if you're trying to strike and somebody crosses the picket line, leftists get it then. Somehow leftists, even though they're talking about systems, they hate scabs. So you know, someone says, "Hey, it's not my fault. It's a system. Like, I got to break this strike," you know. But the system offered me the job, and the system is, you shouldn't be mad at the strike breaker. Get mad at the system and just let all the strike. Like, individuals are going to be the ones to form the organizations that are going to enforce the right behavior that's going to correct the system. And I don't think it's ever like productive when criticizing individuals and what they do wrong, to say, well, you know, shouldn't we blame the corporations? Well, the corporations, like, the blame of the corporation is implicit, you know? Like, if I get mad, I know it's an extreme example, but if I get mad at people for not fighting back at the Nazis, you know, or for letting the Nazis come to power, you know, would somebody say, well, you know, aren't the Nazis like the real villains? Like they're the ones who actually were killing the people. It's like, but yeah, but that's a foregone conclusion. You know, that's like, I've never found. I feel like a lot of times when I talk online, especially like when I used to be on Twitter, that would come up a lot. People always be like, well, isn't it the fault of the corporation? Isn't it the fault of this? And it's like, I think that question always being asked proves what I was saying before about how this generation has been raised with the idea of a benevolent corporation, and how even their sense of being alternative or counterculture is fused with corporations, and their sense of being political and activist, it's inextricably fused with corporations. The fact that that has to be brought up, it has to be assumed that you're letting them off the hook, or that's some kind of epiphany that, you know, the corporation is to blame, when it should just be a given and assume that the corporation is to blame, but you don't expect them to save you. You've got to save yourself.
Anyone knows how to write anymore is Loki. If you can, make the bad guy British, Australian, or German, but never black. If you can't avoid a black bad guy, he's only allowed to be a henchman. If that's not possible either, he has to redeem himself somehow. If that's not possible, you should just douse yourself in horse semen and die because you're Mega Trump Hitler from space. And now I will end the video with some general writing tips. As writing is the hardest discipline in the world, and only writers can criticize stories because appeals to authority and appeals to credentialism are the perfect way to stonewall and censor criticism. Parallel to Glormfleem's decree is the praxis of goblins, and per this praxis you must adhere to this one rule. Be subversive to the point that it doesn't make any sense. How can we...
Yeah, and that, I think, is like, you know, that Family Guy / Robot Chicken type of, you know, attitude that, you know, has been elevated into canon. Like, it just constantly defies expectations, and that automatically makes you mature, even though that type of behavior is immature in its own way. Like doing the opposite of whatever somebody wants you to do to piss them off, which is what they do with fans. They want to piss off fans. Is the epitome of immaturity. Like pointless subversion is just a tantrum.
Do this. Here's a few examples. Kill people's favorite characters. Make your main characters as unlikable as possible. Characters should die unceremoniously just to piss people off.
Yeah, and I feel like Last Jedi hit all these points.
The original costume or outfit you didn't make isn't good enough. As a matter of fact, it's a stupid costume because someone else made it. It's even dumber because a white man made it. The costume will be perfect when it fits a BIPOC LGBTQ disabled woman.
This is a nod to a woke superhero show called Batwoman. Like she actually said something along those lines, that Batman's costume will finally be good when it's made to fit a gay woman.
Story fucking sucks.
Well, she didn't say gay woman. She was a gay woman. But she said when it's made to fit a woman.
If it doesn't have a big twist, so shove one in there, even if it makes no goddamn sense. Be inconsistent about your morals. Everything is okay when the main character does it, but any other character who decides to do that thing deserves to hyper ultra die. And most importantly, make your budget so fucking large that your game, TV show, or movie has to appeal to everyone and make $70 billion, create 9 trillion jobs, and fund.
But this is an example, again, of how everything is fused with corporatism and how these people are vaguely anti-capitalist, but they engage in the most capitalistic stuff. Like they work on movies that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make and must make, as a result, $1 billion. So it's like a super corporate product, a product of hyper capitalism, but they'll pepper it with anti-capitalist messaging that doesn't go anywhere. To again use The Last Jedi as a point, there's like this weird anti-capitalist digression in the story that it's like it's very half-baked and it's in the middle of like a totally soulless corporate product. Like at least the original George Lucas Star Wars, even though it was expensive and made it a big studio, there was at least something personal to the vision. This is pure by committee corporate purchasing of IP and churning out direct, and you're filling it with anti-capitalist messaging in the middle of like the most capitalistic manifestation of this original story.
The construction of a new country or the entire production company will burst into flames, and every employee will simultaneously shit, die, and come as the moon explodes into doo-doo feces.
So what have we learned today? Red car law, Friedrich's principle, the Hercules theory, Blormfleem's decree, and the praxis.
Yeah, I think you get the point. This is the last thing I will show you guys. So the first thing that made me make the Disney Channel realization was when I was trying to watch She-Hulk during the pandemic, and I was like, what does this feel like? This is so terrible. And then I realized, like, this feels like when my niece used to watch Disney Channel. This is like Disney Channel level humor, but for quote unquote adults. Just very cringy. The humor was just like it. And I looked up what Jessica Gao did. And this is a Disney, I don't know if this is a live action show. It's called Boneheads. I think it's animated, but she's worked on some Disney animated stuff, but she's also worked on Disney live action sitcoms. So Disney XD show, it's called Lab Rats. I think it's live action. It's definitely one of those stereotypical Disney shows. So she worked on. She's known for writing episodes of Nickelodeon shows Back at the Barnyard, The Mighty Bee, Big Time Rush, and Kung Fu Panda: Legends of Awesomeness, the Cartoon Network show, The High Fructose Adventures of Annoying Orange, the Disney XD show Live Rats, and the Disney Channel show Boneheads. Some of those are animated, some of those are live action Disney sitcoms. And I was going through more of her stuff, and she had worked on Robot Chicken, which is something we described before, but this kind of immature subversion of like, beloved childhood characters. And then from like those shows, she graduated to quote unquote like adult shows like Silicon Valley. She was on Rick and Morty, which is another like adult cartoon. I'm not sure what she's been up to. It looks like she hasn't done anything since She-Hulk. She has 2 upcoming things, but I don't know what they're about. But I did find it interesting that I had felt that Disney Channel, Nickelodeon energy, and then I looked up, and that was really what she came up on, like that Robot Chicken and everything. And that's kind of what made me realize that those 3 things are the source, I think, of a lot of this stuff. And again, I think the Cartoon Network is the best out of the 3 as far as like the quality of the stuff that you got from Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, but it still had the negative effect of corporatizing your sense of being alt or subversive. It normalized channeling that energy toward corporate mainstream product and IP that you don't own. Yeah, so anyway, that's it. We'll see you next Monday, and looking forward to it. Everyone take care, be safe, and yeah, keep watching. Hopefully this one doesn't get taken down by copyright like Monday's did. Monday's video is being appealed, but it could take as long as 30 days. But if you really want to see it, I uploaded it for free at patreon.com/champagne sharks. So you don't have to wait for the appeal to go through on Monday's show. There's also a chance that it won't, that I might lose the appeal. So if you want to see Monday's YouTube recorded video by AI, it's embedded on patreon.com/champagne sharks, and you don't have to be a member to see it. It's there for free and visible to everybody. All right. So everyone, take care. Have a good night. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to be here, and that's greatly appreciated. Take care.